Chapter 416. Let's go out for a walk. Hearing Noah say something like that, Lebby was completely stunned. What does that mean? Is it an invitation for a date? That. Lebby asked carefully. Noah, what do you mean by go out for a walk? Can you be more specific? More specific? Noah found it strange. It means what it means. How much more specific do you need me to be? Ahahaha. Lebby laughed dryly and shook her head. Then you should go look for Mila or Lisanna. I'm not suitable. Why not? Noah's interest was piqued when he saw Lebby's strange reaction. I think Lebby is pretty good. Pretty good? Lebby raised her voice a little. Is it really a date? But doesn't Noah already have Mila? Furthermore, Noah seemed to be in an ambiguous relationship with Lisanna. Didn't he? What was the meaning of inviting him now? Is it really like what Jet and Troy said? Is Noah a womanizer who likes every girl he sees? Thinking of this, Lebby shook her head fiercely and denied her guess. After all, Lebby had grown up with Noah in the guild, and she had always seen Noah's performance since he was a child. If Noah was really a womanizer, he wouldn't have been so well-behaved after so many years. With Noah's strength, good looks, and good character, if Noah really had the heart, he would have gathered a lot of girls around him. However, Noah had not returned to the guild for 6 years. It was very likely that he had changed in the past 6 years. What should I do? Unable to make up her mind, Levi began to feel conflicted. On the other hand, the corner of Noah's mouth twitched as he watched Lebby fall into silence. She shook her head, suddenly came to a realization, had an uncertain expression, and was inexplicably conflicted. What was the saying again? A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. Why did Lebby become like this all of a sudden? Noah really couldn't figure out the reason. How is it? Noah asked helplessly. Do you agree or not? Can you give me a definite answer? Wait. Lebby said in a panic. Let me think about it. Noah rolled his eyes. Consider, looking at how conflicted you are, I'm afraid you won't be able to come up with a solution, even by nightfall, right? Moreover, Noah had specifically brought it up when Jet and Troy were not around. When Jet and Troy returned, things would probably become even more troublesome. Noah grabbed Lebby's hand and pulled her up from her seat. She was caught off guard by Noah's action. Since you can't come up with an answer, I'll decide for you. Let's go. Wait. Perhaps it was because she was delusional, but when Noah grabbed her hand, Lebby panicked and stuttered. At least let me bring my book. We're going shopping, not for an exam. Why are we bringing books? Noah pulled Lebby's hand and walked out of the guild. Let's go. Slow down. Just like that, Noah and Lebby left the guild amidst their banter. Noah didn't notice. Inside the guild, Julian, who was surrounded by a group of male magic shooters, glanced at Noah's back as he walked out of the guild. There was less fear in his eyes, and more gratitude and curiosity. A jewelry store? After exiting the guild, Leia was stunned when she heard Noah's destination. She then looked at Noah with a doubtful expression. Why are we going to a jewelry store? What can I do there? Noah rubbed his nose and changed the subject. Of course it's to buy something, isn't it? Do you want to buy jewelry? Realization dawned on Levi's face. You want to give it to Mila or Lisanna, right? Well, that's more or less it, Noah said half-heartedly. It's just that it's been 2 years since I left Magnolia. Back then, I trained outside for 4 years, and I didn't stay long after I came back. It's been 6 years since I last visited Magnolia. I don't even know where to find a good shop. So that's why you asked me to show you the way. Lebby finally understood. She didn't know if she was relieved or disappointed as she let out a sigh of relief. Then why didn't you say so earlier? Is that so? Noah looked at her with a half-smile. It seems like someone didn't give me time to explain, and fell into some delusional delusion. Lebby blushed and glared at Noah. I'm not delusional. Yes. Noah waved his hand casually, as if he didn't hear what Lebby said at all. This made Lebby grit her teeth. Don't look at me like that. Seeing Lebby's hateful expression, Noah stretched out his hand and patted her little head. In return, I'll buy you a book as a gift later. Really? Lebby couldn't care less about Noah patting her head affectionately. She was delighted, but soon seemed to have thought of something and changed the topic. But I remember that you haven't had a job since you came back. You don't have any money on you, right? How are you going to buy jewelry and books? Well, Noah smiled mysteriously. I have my own plans. Thus, under Leby's lead, Noah arrived at the most famous jewelry store in Magnolia. You want a custom-made diamond ring? The shopkeeper, who looked very upscale and was wearing branded clothes, said to Noah with a very businesslike smile. Of course. It'll only take about half an hour to complete it. Half an hour? Noah couldn't help being surprised. Can it be completed so quickly? Of course, the shop owner recommended in a warm tone. Our store has magical equipment specially configured for the creation of all kinds of jewelry. No matter what kind of jewelry it is, it'll be completed in less than an hour. It'll definitely satisfy you. Hearing this, Noah was relieved. Yes, this world was different from other worlds. No matter what industry it would be related to magic. After all, it was such a convenient thing. It would be a waste if he didn't make good use of it. Then please help me make 2 diamond rings. Noah placed a piece of paper on the counter. The required model number and requirements are already written on it. You just have to follow them. Yes, no problem. At this time, the store owner began to rub his hands together. It's just that the price. Noah smiled indifferently. He took out a dagger from the side of his jacket. It was an ordinary dagger. However, there were intricate runes engraved on the blade of the dagger. Noah slowly released his magic power from the limited state and poured his magic power into the dagger. In the next moment, the dagger, which was extremely ordinary except for the intricate runes on the blade, flashed with a crackling electric light. Seeing this, the store owner cried out in surprise. Magical weapon? Actually, this was not a magical weapon. It was just an ordinary dagger. However, Noah had engraved runes on this ordinary dagger. This way, as long as he poured magical power into the dagger, the runes engraved on the dagger would be activated. It was no different from an ordinary magical weapon. In this world, the price of a magical weapon was different depending on its effect. The price of a magical weapon with lightning magic had always been high. Originally, Noah wanted to use it to exchange for some money, but now he changed his mind. I'll use this dagger to exchange for 2 diamond rings and 100,000 J. Noah looked at the store owner with a smile. What do you think? Okay. The store owner readily agreed. Even if it was a rough estimate, Noah's dagger could be used to buy 10 diamond rings. In other words, this was a profitable transaction. As long as the store owner wasn't an idiot, he would definitely not refuse. Seeing the store owner's incomparable enthusiasm, Noah sighed and couldn't help but smile. Chapter 417. Phew. When the shop owner entered the inner shop to start making rings, Noah heaved a sigh of relief and walked to Leby, who was reading a new book with great interest at the side. I thought I would have to put in a little effort to persuade him. I didn't think it would be so easy. Although the price of a lightning magic weapon was not cheap, Noah was still here to buy something. Generally speaking, in this kind of formal shop, bartering was basically not allowed. At least, Noah had rarely heard of any shop in the other 3 worlds that supported bartering. Normally, one would have to buy it with cash. Therefore, even if the dagger had the same effect as a normal magic weapon after engraving runi on it, Noah still thought that he would have to put in a lot of effort to persuade him. It was even possible that he would have to sell the dagger before he could buy the ring. In the end, unexpectedly, it was not difficult at all. The most important thing in this world is magic. Therefore, the status of a magic weapon is very high. Leby did not even lift her head from the book in her hand, as she responded to Noah's words, as if she was talking to herself. Moreover, the price of your dagger is definitely not low. That shop owner would not reject such a good deal. At this point, Leby more or less felt a little regretful. Speaking of which, I didn't think that a weapon engraved with runi would have the same value as a magic weapon. It would be great if I could use runi magic. For Noah, engraving runi was not a difficult thing to do. Moreover, it was not some high-level runi that was difficult to engrave. Therefore, Leby could imagine that if Noah specialized in engraving runi on weapons, He could transform all the normal weapons into magic weapons and sell them one by one. Then, even if he did not work in the guild, he could still become rich and would not have to worry about money. Noah was also inspired by the Rooney's magic defense system when he was rebuilding the guild. Only then did he think of using this method to earn money. He did not think that it would be so successful. However, in this world, or rather in every world, Noah was the only one who could use this method to earn money. After all, only Noah could pass through the barrier between worlds. Under the guidance of the world, even if he crossed worlds, he could still be in contact with the magic base plate of the Night of the Magi and continue to use magic. If it was someone else, then there would be no way. This was also the magical effect of the sacred words passed down from Northern Europe. Just like in this world, Leby's word-type magic couldn't achieve the same effect. If I knew that you had this ability, I would have bought 2 more books just now. Leby looked at Noah angrily. It's rare that a new bookshop. The bookstore won't run away. Are you afraid that you won't be able to buy it in the future? Noah glanced at the bulging bag beside Leby speechlessly. Also, in the end, didn't you buy those new books? I paid for them with my own money. Leby sighed. Geez, I have to be more careful this month, or else I won't be able to pay for the accommodation at the end of the month. Hearing this, Noah did not know whether to laugh or cry. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly saw an alley from the corner of his eye, causing him to frown. He saw that in an alley opposite the shop, several guys who looked like gangsters were surrounding a child, and their faces were full of hostility. The child was still sitting on the ground, and his face was full of fear. Leby seemed to be confused as to why Noah suddenly stopped talking. She raised her head and looked at Noah. What's wrong? Nothing. Noah casually replied and turned around. As he walked outside, he waved at Leby. Wait for me here, I'll go out for a while. Wait. Just as Leby wanted to say something to Noah, Noah walked out of the shop and directly walked to the opposite side, causing Leby to tilt her head. Did he suddenly have another idea? With this thought in mind, Leby refocused her attention on the book in her hand and began to read with great interest. Hey, kid, don't play dead. Hurry up and get up. In that narrow alley, 3 extremely badly dressed people were surrounding a child who was sitting on the ground and shivering. The leader of the group was even yelling out viciously. Did you see that? You dirted my clothes. Upon closer inspection, the corner of the gangster leader's pants was smeared with a little black stain. This little bit of dirt could be wiped off with just a little rub, but the leader of the hooligans had no intention of wiping it off. Instead, he arrogantly placed it there and shouted at the child who was paralyzed on the ground with an insolent expression. Don't you have eyes when you walk? How can you rub on anything? Hurry up and pay for it. Pay for it, pay for it. The 2 hoodlums' underlings also chimed in from the side, seeming to enjoy the current situation. Ugh. The child who was paralyzed on the ground could only shrink her body and hold back her tears, not daring to make a sound. She was a young girl who was about 8 or 9 years old. The young girl had short white hair and wore dirty clothes. Even her small face was smeared with dirt. It seemed like she had not changed her clothes for a long time. Moreover, it was very likely that she came from outside Magnolia, otherwise, she would not be so travel-worn. However, this travel-worn appearance had caused some trouble for the young girl. This was because the young girl had bumped into this delinquent leader in the crowd on the street. She had dirted the delinquent leader's pants a little, and in the end, the delinquent leader had made things difficult for her. It was unknown whether the gangster leader was enjoying the thrill of bullying the young girl, or was actually planning to cheat money from a child who did not look like a rich person at all. Seeing that the young girl was getting more and more scared, he became more and more pleased. Don't you want to be responsible for your actions? Then don't blame us for being rude. The young girl suddenly trembled and closed her eyes in fear. Hee. The gangster leader licked his lips excitedly and reached out to grab the young girl's head. Pa! At this moment, a hand suddenly stretched out from the side and grabbed the gangster leader's wrist. Without giving the gangster leader a chance to react, the hand that grabbed the gangster leader's wrist suddenly pulled hard. The gangster leader was caught off guard and lost his balance. His body fell and floated in the air. Immediately, the owner of the hand suddenly spun and threw the gangster leader away. Bang! The gangster leader with bad intentions directly smashed into an empty wooden box in the alley, smashing the wooden box into pieces. Ouch! Until then, the gangster leader's shrill scream rang out. It couldn't be helped. The wooden box was filled with iron nails. The leader of the hooligans who bumped into it directly sat on it. It wasn't clear whether he was bleeding or not, but from the screams, it should have been very painful. Hearing the hooligan's screams, the dirty girl raised her head in a daze. Then she saw what was happening. She saw a figure replace the gangster leader's position. She did not know when, but he was standing in between the two gangsters' underlings. The newcomer was naturally Noah. Who is it? You bastard. Only then did the two hoodlums react. Just as they were about to make a move, they were swept by a frosty gaze. Suddenly, the two gangsters' underlings only felt their heads turn cold and their hearts turn cold. They involuntarily took a few steps back and distanced themselves from Noah. To this, Noah only coldly said, "Scram! You!" One of the gangsters was enraged, but before he could do anything, the other gangster pulled him back and pointed at the back of Noah's hand. On it, there was a guild emblem that all residents of Magnolia would be familiar with. It was the guild emblem fairy tale. It's from that guild. Hurry up and leave." The two gangsters' faces were full of fear as they fled in panic. You guys. The leader of the hooligans who sat in the iron-nailed wooden box was so angry that he wanted to yell. However, when he saw the emblem on the back of Noah's hand, he immediately covered his buttocks and ran away while screaming inaudibly. Chapter 4:18. After a series of rolling and crawling, the three hoodlums all ran away in a sorry state. Not long after, they disappeared from Noah's sight. After the three hoodlums disappeared from his sight, Noah turned around and looked at the dirty white-haired little girl. When her eyes met with Noah's, the little girl couldn't help but jump in fright. She quickly shrank her body and spoke in a trembling voice. Thank you, sir." From the beginning, the little girl used honorifics that normal children would never use. It was not polite behavior, but a certain emotion in the little girl's heart that caused trouble. Inferiority. He didn't know what kind of life she had in the past, but there seemed to be a very strong sense of inferiority in the little girl's heart, causing the little girl to constantly place her status below everyone else. Thus the so-called Sir title was born. Although there was no proof, Noah inexplicably understood this point. At that moment, Noah couldn't help but slightly crouch down, and even kneel on one knee on the ground. He took out the handkerchief that Mira would secretly stuff into his pocket every day. He stretched out his empty hand, lifted the little girl's little face, and gently wiped it. When Noah stretched out his hand, the little girl still had a frightened look on her face. But when Noah used extremely gentle movements to help the little girl wipe her face, the fear in the little girl's heart magically disappeared. This was not strange. In the world of the Black Bullet, Noah often took care of the children of the cursed child, like a nanny. Thus, Noah had already mastered how to eliminate the nervousness, timidity, and fear in a child's heart. This gentle wiping action was one of them. After wiping the little girl's dirty little face clean, Noah was surprised to find that the little girl in front of him was quite cute. Moreover, the little girl's hair was white and did not go past her shoulders. Her appearance was at least 95% similar to Lysana's when she was young. If Lysana saw this little girl, she would definitely be very surprised, right? Not knowing the surprise in Noah's heart, the little girl nervously opened her mouth. Thank you, sir." It was the same sentence, but instead of fear, it sounded more nervous. This caused Noah to recover from his shock. He smiled slightly and stuffed the handkerchief into the young girl's hand. "What's your name?" "Me." The young girl glanced at Noah hesitantly. After a while, she responded with a mosquito's voice. My name is Xuanai." "Xuanai?" Noah couldn't help but smile. He gently rubbed the snow-white hair of the girl named Xuanai. "This name suits you. Thank you for your exaggeration, my lord." Xuanai lowered his head. That was because Xuanai didn't dare to look straight at Noah, and also because Xuanai didn't want Noah to see her reveal a comfortable expression when she was rubbing his head. Perhaps it was because Noah's methods of dispelling the negative emotions in children's hearts were truly exceptional. Xuanai secretly glanced at Noah. After a while, she gathered her courage and asked this question. Why are those bad guys so afraid of Lord? Hearing this, Noah was stunned. Why do you ask this question? Xuanai wants to learn. The white-haired girl said with an innocent and pure expression. If that's the case, no one will bully Xuanai in the future. This sentence caused the smile on Noah's face to disappear bit by bit. He fixed his gaze on Xuanai's tender and timid little face. He sighed and smiled. They're afraid of me because I'm a sorcerer. Sorcerer? Xuanai tilted her head. Lord, are you a sorcerer? That's right. Noah suddenly smiled. Moreover, you're a sorcerer from the strongest guild in the Fiori kingdom. The strongest guild. Sorcerer. Xuanai murmured as if she was sleep-talking. She couldn't help but let out a longing voice. If Xuanai can also become a sorcerer, that would be great. Why not? Noah raised an eyebrow. As long as Xuanai wants to, she can definitely become a great sorcerer. Hearing Noah's words, Xuanai's eyes couldn't help but brighten. She looked at Noah with a face full of hope. Really? Xuanai can also learn magic? Can she become a sorcerer? Xuanai, you have to remember one thing. Noah looked straight at Xuanai's sparkling eyes. The possibilities of a person are limitless. It's the same for magic. That is everyone's heart. Heart? Xuanai repeated in confusion. That's right. Magic is the human heart. As long as one knows how to persevere, then no matter who it is, they can learn magic. Noah used his hand to gently caress Xuanai's little face. His action was exceptionally gentle, as if it could calm one's heart, making Xuanai feel a sense of peace and attachment. As long as Xuanai firmly believes that you can become a great sorcerer, then your heart will definitely respond to you and bestow you magic. Really? Unknowingly, Xuanai had long forgotten her vigilance and fear toward strangers. She was subconsciously attracted by Noah's words. She slightly approached Noah, stretched out her hand, and grabbed Noah's clothes. She spoke with a face full of expectation. Then if Xuanai learns magic, will I not bring misfortune to others and not be bullied by others? That will depend on what Xuanai wants to do after learning magic. Noah tried his best to soften his tone, as if he was trying to give the young girl hope. If Xuanai only wants to not be bullied, then as long as you learn magic, there will be very few people who can bully you in the future. But if Xuanai wants to become a great sorcerer, not only does she not want to be bullied, but she also wants to help those who are bullied. That will require more effort. Help others. The expression on Xuanai's pretty face dimmed slightly. Can Xuanai also help others? What are you talking about? Noah laughed involuntarily and lightly knocked on Xuanai's little head. Don't forget, you have to believe that you can do it. Then your heart will respond to you and give you magic. Yes, yes. Xuanai then remembered what Noah said before. Her little head repeatedly nodded, and her eyes were filled with hope for the future. Seeing this, Noah knew that he had succeeded. The young girl in front of him seemed to be the same as Alicia. She had a past that couldn't be described as beautiful, causing her to become quite inferior. Noah wanted to let Xuanai's heart have a little more hope for reality in the future, so that she would have more motivation and live a better life. Seeing that you are so obedient, I will give you some gifts. Saying this, Noah took out two things and placed them in Xuanai's little hand. It was a money bag and a key. The money bag was just exchanged from the jewelry store owner with a dagger engraved with runi. There were 100,000 J coins inside. The key was the Star Soul key. It was given to Noah by Lucy when Noah returned to this world, before returning to the guild with Alicia, Naz, Gray, and Lucy. Noah originally wanted to use this key as a talisman, but now, if he gave it to Xuanai, perhaps it could let Xuanai sign a contract with the Star Soul and awaken the Star Soul magic. Use them well, Noah said softly as he put the money bag and key into Xuanai's hand. I hope that the next time we meet, you will have become a great sorcerer. Leaving this sentence, Noah stood up, patted Xuanai's little head, turned around, and left without any reluctance. My My lord. Xuanai, who had been staring at the money bag and key in her hand, finally recovered from her absent-minded state. She quickly got up and shouted in the direction of Noah. Please tell Xuanai, what is your name? As soon as the voice fell, Noah's voice reverberated in Xuanai's ears. My name is Noah, goodbye little Xuanai. With such a sentence, Noah walked into the opposite jewelry store and disappeared from Xuanai's sight. Xuanai stared blankly at the direction where Noah disappeared. After a long time, she lowered her head and looked at the money bag and key in her hand. She held them tightly in her arms and murmured, as if she had found the most precious treasure. Noah, my lord. In the mood of worrying about gains and losses, Xuanai couldn't help but think of Noah's words just now. The sorcerer of the strongest guild. Tightly holding the money bag and key, Xuanai showed an unprecedented determined expression. In the future, I will also join the strongest guild and become the sorcerer of the strongest guild. Chapter 419. When Noah returned to the jewelry store, the shop owner, who had been forging rings in the inner shop, had already appeared. Levi had put away her book and seemed to be discussing something with the owner. She only heaved a sigh of relief when Noah returned. Great, I thought you wouldn't come back. You're exaggerating, aren't you? Noah rolled his eyes at Layla. Immediately, he shifted his gaze and looked at the shop owner, who was full of smiles as he inquired. Is it done? Yes, sorry to keep you waiting. The owner handed 2 decorated boxes to Noah. Please take a look and see if it meets your requirements. Noah and Levi shifted their attention to the 2 boxes, and their eyes lit up at the same time. The lid of the box was open. Therefore, Noah and Levi could clearly see the contents of the 2 boxes. They were 2 extremely exquisite rings in all aspects. Both rings were of a pure silver-white color. The ring was slender, and at first glance, it was obvious that it was a more feminine design. The ring was inlaid with a diamond that was neither too big nor too small. Under the sunlight, it shone with a dazzling arc like a pearl, but it was even more dazzling and attractive than a pearl. These 2 rings were incomparable to those priceless and unique treasures, but in terms of craftsmanship, appearance, cost, and exquisiteness, they were the best of the best. She believed that even the wedding rings of some rich couples were probably at this level. Of course, the most important thing was that for women who loved beauty by nature, such 2 rings could definitely evoke the longing of any girl. This could be seen from Rebbe, who had always displayed an obvious interest in reading books. It's so beautiful. Levi's eyes were sparkling. I want it so much. Even Noah couldn't find any fault with the 2 rings, let alone Levi. He nodded in satisfaction and closed the box. Thank you, owner. You're welcome, you're welcome. The restaurant owner rubbed his hands and said to Noah enthusiastically, if you have any requests in the future, please continue to visit our store. We will provide you with the best service and products. Of course. Noah nodded with a smile and walked out with the 2 boxes in his hands. He couldn't hide his joy. Just as Lebby was about to follow him, she noticed that the shopkeeper was wiping a tiny diamond on his sleeve. That diamond was not as exquisite as the diamond inlaid on the 2 rings on Noah's hand. At first glance, it was obvious that it had not been specially polished. Levi rolled her eyes when she saw the small diamond. She seemed to have understood something, and curiously moved her face closer to the owner. Is that the diamond left over from the polishing of the 2 rings? Yes. When I was making it, I thought I would need more, so I cut a little more. In the end, it was left over. The shop owner seemed to be overjoyed. It's a little small, but if you polish it well, it can be made into a high-priced ring. Is that so? Levi said with a smile. Then, give me this small diamond. The shopkeeper was stunned. He did not expect Lebby to make such a request out of the blue. That's the diamond left over, right? It's also my companion's property. Lebby reminded him out of kindness. If you let him know that you still have such a diamond left after forging the ring, and haven't given it to him, then my partner will definitely think that you are cutting corners. Then next time, he will definitely not bring you the same business. Even that dagger may be taken back. Don't. Only then did the shopkeeper realize what was going on. He let out a hollow laugh and handed the tiny diamond to Layla reluctantly. I just forgot about it. Please pass it to that person. I will. Levi replied cheerfully. She took the diamond and skipped out of the jewelry store. Afterward, Lebby put the tiny diamond into a pouch that looked like an amulet. She tied the pouch with a red string and hung it around her neck. As for why she did that, perhaps even she didn't know. Night came quietly. Lying on the bed in his room, Noah held a box in one hand and opened the lid of the box. He started to observe the two delicate rings once again. As if it was planned, the door to Noah's room was pushed open. Mira and Lisanna entered at the same time. Noah, big brother Noah, come in. In the 2 years that Noah had left Fairy Tale, Mira and Lisanna had helped him clean his room almost every day. They had long regarded Noah's room as their own, and wouldn't have any restrictions. With their current relationship with Noah, they didn't need to care about anything when they entered their sweetheart's room. Therefore, with just a simple greeting, the beautiful sisters of the Strauss family entered Noah's room, as if they were entering their own room. It's already dark. Why are you here? Noah hurriedly got up from his bed and looked at the sky outside the window. He then looked at Mira and Lisanna with a reproachful gaze. You two are already tired today. Why don't you go home and rest? Due to the turmoil in the magic world, it wasn't just Fairy Tale. As long as a guild had the ability to go on a punitive expedition against the Dark Guild and the Order of Magic, they would be in a period of eruption of requests. The emergence of the Dark Guild and the Order of Magic in various parts of the Fiori Kingdom had greatly affected the local residents. They were even a threat and danger. Many residents were in a state of panic and secretly issued requests to various guilds to invite archmages to annihilate the Dark Guild. Mira was a retired S-rank magic shooter from the Fairy Tale. Although it was not yet necessary to ask her to take action, Mira was the one who handled all kinds of miscellaneous affairs and official affairs in the guild. In order to deal with the requests from all over the kingdom, Mira must have been very busy today. As for Lisanna, she had been tormented by Noah for a few hours during the day. She hadn't even rested for a while before going down to help Mira with various tasks. She must be very tired now. We were just about to go back. Myra's smile was still as gentle as ever. But before we go back, we wanted to say hello to you. Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but laugh. In the guild, Noah, Mira, and Lisanna could see each other almost every day. However, the two of them seemed to have made up their minds to come to Noah's room every morning when they came to the guild, and when they left at night. Even Noah couldn't do anything about it. Of course, Noah wouldn't object to being together with Mira and Lisanna. At this moment, Lisanna noticed the 2 diamond rings in Noah's hands. Her eyes immediately lit up, and she reached out to tug at Noah's clothes. Hey, big brother Noah, what's this? After hearing what Lisanna said, no matter how natural Mira was, it was impossible for her not to notice it. When she saw the 2 exquisitely crafted diamond rings, her expression immediately brightened. This made Noah sigh. As expected, women are unable to withstand the test of the charm of a diamond. With this thought in mind, Noah rolled his eyes and replied with a spurious smile. Of course, this is for when I propose to my future bride. Propose? Mira and Lisanna glanced at each other. Their eyes were nailed to the 2 rings, and they couldn't take their eyes off them. If the 2 girls had only seen the rings as something they liked before, then now they were looking at the most precious treasures of their lives. Even their eyes were shining. Seeing this, Noah mischievously closed the lid and said, You have to keep them safe. I have to keep them safe, and take them out when I need to propose in the future. No. At this moment, whether it was the gentle Mira or the cute Lisanna, both of them cried out in alarm and pounced on Noah without caring about their image. In an instant, the 2 girls were in a mess on the bed, fighting for the 2 small boxes with all their might. It lasted until the middle of the night before the persistent Mira and Lisanna won. Chapter 420. Fiancé. The next day, in the hall on the first floor of Fairy Tale, all the magic shooters of Fairy Tale were stunned when they saw Mira and Lisanna hugging Noah's arm tightly. Noah was surrounded in the middle with a blissful expression on his face. This was because Mira and Lisanna had ignored Noah's dissuasion and hugged Noah's arm tightly while informing the entire guild of this shocking news. This caused an uproar in the hall, and then a sudden silence in the next moment. Fiancé. Naz, Gray, hubby, and the others were all dumbfounded. Fiancé? Too. Lucy and Levi opened their mouths wide in shock and couldn't react at all. Mira and Lisanna? Alesha's eyes widened, and her mouth formed an O shape. She pointed at Noah, Mira, and Lisanna with trembling hands. In other words, you're going to get married? No, we don't plan to get married so soon, Noah quickly said. He couldn't help it as the atmosphere was too awkward for him. It's just that we plan to get engaged first and get married later. Get married. Alesha muttered absent-mindedly. After a while, she seemed to have thought of something and smoke suddenly appeared in her head. Even her fingers were fidgeting. I'm not mentally prepared yet. No, they're going to get married, not you. All of the magic shooters in Fairy Tale complained in unison. At this time, the one who felt the most incredulous was Makarov. At this time, the wine glass in Makarov's hand fell to the ground. He staggered in front of Noah, Mira, and Lisanna and asked with an extremely ugly expression that looked like he was crying and laughing at the same time. Getting married? Noah, my grandson? Marrying Mira and Lisanna? Yes. The smile on Myra's beautiful face was still gentle, but it was much brighter than before. She even raised her hand with the diamond ring and showed it to everyone. Yesterday, Noah proposed to us, and the answer we gave was okay. Levi exclaimed in surprise. So that ring is for a marriage proposal? Grandpa. Noah's gaze met Makarov's. The awkwardness in his heart had long disappeared, and only warmth filled his heart. I'm really going to get married and have a family. Have a family. Makarov lowered his head and shoulders trembled. After a while he suddenly burst into tears. Guild leader. All the magic shooters in the guild were shocked. Grandpa's face. My grandson is finally going to start a family. Makarov cried out in joy. Moreover, there are 2 of them. Hearing this, the sorcerers in Fairy Tale understood that Makarov's reaction was only because he was too excited and moved. Grandpa. Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That being said, we're just getting engaged first. As for when we'll get married, we'll discuss it later. Let's get engaged first. Makarov was already speaking incoherently. When we get married in the future, we must hold the grandest wedding in the entire Fiori Kingdom. Only then can we show the prestige of the next president of Fairy Tale. Guild leader. This time Lisanna was a little shy. You made your decision too quickly. Although she said so, Lisanna's face was full of longing. She was obviously looking forward to her wedding. Or rather, she was looking forward to the moment when she became Noah's bride. Lisanna. Beside her, Myra's pretty face was also slightly red, but she still quietly tugged at Lisanna. You have to call me Grandpa in the future. Lisanna was even more shy. That's really too fast. It's okay. It doesn't matter when you call me Grandpa. Makarov laughed with tears in his eyes. In short, we're having a banquet today to celebrate my grandson's engagement. Oh. Although Nazi, Gray, and the others were still very surprised, they still cheered enthusiastically and gave their blessings to their childhood best friend. Congratulations, Noah. Gray hugged Noah's neck and laughed. You rascal, I didn't expect you to get married so soon. You're really hateful. Although I don't quite understand. Nazi put his hands on his waist and laughed loudly. But still, congratulations, Noah. Hey, Nazi. Hubby was frightened by Alesha's appearance and flew in Nazi's direction. Alesha has become very strange. Get married. Alesha's head was still smoking, and she was in a crash. Damn it. As for the rest of the magic shooters from Fairy Tale, they let out tragic cries of grief. Oh, Armila sauce. Hey. Is no one complaining? Lucy felt that her whole body was not good, and could not help but remind them loudly. Noah is going to marry 2 people. Two people is good. 2 people is good. Makarov was so happy that he lost his sense of direction. But it was not strange. Although Noah was not Makarov's biological grandson, Makarov did not regard Noah as an adopted grandson at all. After all, Laxus was already like that, and Noah was quite capable. Whether it was strength, temperament, intelligence, or methods, there was nothing that was not outstanding. Makarov had always been proud of him. Now such a grandson was going to get married? As a grandfather, how could Makarov not be happy? In addition, the other party was the extremely popular masked lady Mira Jenny and her sister Lisanna, who was not inferior to her elder sister in the slightest. These two treasures of the guild, Makarov loved them dearly. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party was Noah, perhaps the first one to stand up and object would be Makarov. As for the male magic shooters in the guild, they were already lying on the ground with tears streaming down their faces. He's actually marrying two women? And sisters? Levi, who finally reacted from the shock, let out an extremely complicated sigh. This is the first time I've heard that someone other than a king and a noble would marry two people at the same time. Although there was no such thing as monogamy in this world, people tacitly agreed that there was only one person to marry, even if it was a wealthy businessman. Take Lucy for example. Lucy's father was a rich man, but he had only married Lucy's mother from the beginning to the end. So far, there had been no news of him marrying a second person, and generally, those who would marry more than one person were either the king of a country or some nobles whose status was only below the king. It was not impossible for ordinary people to marry two people, but it was really rare. But no matter what, the moment the rings were put on Mira and Lisanna's hands, this fact had already been decided. It also meant that Mira and Lisanna, the sisters, had truly begun to accept reality and serve a man together. Regarding this, the happiest people were Jet and Troy. Good, Jet shouted. That's great. Noah, Troy also exclaimed excitedly. We support you. This way, the chances of Levi joining the pirate ship would be infinitely reduced to zero. How could Jet and Troy not support him? Unfortunately, nothing was absolute in this world. What would happen in the future would only be known in the future. Ever since I was young, I've always felt that you're not a simple man. I didn't expect you to really do it. Kana, who had returned from her mission, giggled as she raised her glass. Well, anyway, let's drink. Grandpa, where's Elfman? Noah rubbed his nose, ignoring the mockery and complaints of the people around him as he asked Makarov. Elfman hasn't returned from his mission yet? When I received the report in the morning, he said that he was already on his way back. Makarov patted Noah's shoulder, his old face flushed red. When he comes back, you should tell him about this in person. Noah nodded heavily, apologizing in his heart. I'm sorry, Elfman. I'll take care of your elder and younger sister. Chapter 421. Pa! Not long after returning to Fairy Tale, Elfman, who had just put down his luggage, dropped the wine glass that he had just picked up onto the ground with a crisp sound. However, Elfman didn't notice it at all. He stared blankly at Noah, Mira, and Lisanna. His resolute face was filled with shock, bewilderment, and disbelief. Although the sorcerers in Fairy Tale behaved the same way at the beginning, Noah could not hide his awkwardness when he was faced with the same behavior again. Especially when it was Elfman. That was only natural. No matter who it was, they would react the same way as Elfman when they heard that someone was going to marry more than one of their family members. It was because of this that Noah felt so awkward. If he was only marrying one, he wouldn't have to feel guilty. The problem was that Noah wasn't marrying one, but two, and they were marrying the older and younger sisters of Elfman. Fortunately, it was Noah who told Elfman that he was going to marry his older sister and younger sister. If it were anyone else, Elfman would probably be waving his fist. Compared to Noah, Mira and Lisanna were calm. They wore gentle and cute smiles respectively as they gazed at Elfman. They seemed to be enjoying Elfman's reaction. Phew. After some time, Elfman let out a heavy sigh. He picked up another wine glass and finished it in one gulp. Then he looked at Noah sternly. Noah, I've always thought that you're a man. Is that so? Noah couldn't help but reveal a puzzled expression. But why don't I feel happy about your praise at all? That's what a man is. Elfman used a theory that no one else could understand as he stared at Noah. That's why, as a man, Noah, teasing another man is absolutely unforgivable. Upon hearing that, Mira and Lisanna couldn't help but giggle. Only Noah let out an understanding sigh. It was understandable that Elfman couldn't believe it, wasn't it? Elfman, Mira said softly as if she was trying to console her younger brother. You can't doubt the words of others. It's very rude. Big brother Elfman, it's all true, Lisanna teased. Big sister Mira and I are going to become Noah's brides. You can't object even if you want to. That's what a real man is. Elfman's tan face was covered in sweat as he said this. That's right. A man has to be able to accept everything. A man has to be able to marry 2 wives. A man has to marry the same man. That's what a man is. Seeing that Elfman had fallen into a state of incoherence, Noah didn't even have the mood to complain about the strange things that Elfman said. I know that this is too sudden, but Elfman, I'm not joking. Noah could only meet Elfman's gaze head-on. Although I haven't decided when, I will definitely take your sisters away from you forever. That's a fact. Saying that he would take Elfman's sisters away from him forever was more or less an exaggeration, but it wasn't entirely false. Although he had thought of all sorts of possibilities, Noah only wanted to use this to express his determination. That was because Noah knew how important each other's existence was to Mira, Elfman, and Lisanna. Ever since they were young, the 3 of them had relied on each other for survival. In the lives of these 3 siblings, their father and mother, who had long ceased to exist in their lives, were not even as important as each other. The 3 of them used to live in the same village, but because Mira had awakened the demon's magic, she was chased out of the village. Later on, in order to survive, they ran to all corners of the Fiori kingdom, and even joined Fairy Tale. The 3 of them had never left each other's side. Therefore, to Elfman, his elder sister and younger sister were definitely the most important thing in his life, without exception. To Mira and Lisanna, Elfman's status as a family member was also the most important. He was even on par with the person they loved the most, which was Noah. Therefore, since Noah had decided to get engaged to Mira and Lisanna first, and would definitely marry them in the future, he didn't want to face Elfman with a perfunctory attitude. Mira and Lisanna seemed to understand Noah's thoughts. They both shut their mouths and chose to watch from the side. They looked at Noah and Elfman with extremely gentle expressions, showing the most complete trust. The 2 men in front of them, one was their lover, and the other was their most important family member. Therefore, Mira and Lisanna believed that the 2 men wouldn't make a decision that would disappoint them. Elfman seemed to have seen Noah's seriousness from Noah's attitude. He finally snapped out of his messy state and scratched his head in frustration. Although I've already seen that my sister and Lisanna's attitudes towards you are different, I didn't expect them to choose to marry you in the end. Elfman crossed his arms and looked at Noah with a sharp gaze that he would never use in the past. As a man, Noah, I only want you to promise me that you will protect my sister and sister with your life. Can you do that? Hearing this, Noah smiled. His smile was strangely arrogant. Is this the first day you've known me? Noah didn't give any promises, nor did he make any vows. Elfman smiled as well. That's a real man. Seeing this scene with their own eyes, Mira and Lisanna revealed gentle smiles. As expected, these 2 men wouldn't disappoint them. At this moment, Elfman suddenly changed the topic. Then, should I call you brother-in-law or brother-in-law in the future? This one sentence made Noah, Mira, and Lisanna choke at the same time. None of them had thought of this question before. No matter what, today was a happy day. Just like a festival, all the banquets in Fairy Tale were destined to last for the whole day. At this moment, whether it was those who sincerely gave their blessings, or those who were envious, they seemed to have forgotten everything and were jubilant. So much so that no one noticed. On the 2nd floor of Fairy Tale, a solemn atmosphere that was completely out of tune with the jubilant atmosphere of the guild was permeated in a corner. There were 4 people in that corner. They were none other than Raxus, and the 3 members of the Thunder God Council. Looking down at Noah, who was surrounded by a group of people, and had entered an endless toasting scenario, continuously drinking cup after cup of wine with a bitter smile on his face. Laxus tightened his grip on the guardrail bit by bit. The emotions surging in his eyes was an unprecedented kind of madness. At this moment, the only thing that reverberated in Laxus's mind was the sentence that Makarov had said in a state of ecstasy. Fairy Tale's next guild leader? Thinking of this sentence, Laxus's heart surged with a wave of violent emotions. Even his eyes turned red. In the end, you still chose to let that kind of person inherit the guild. How long do you want this guild to be a coward, old man? Standing behind Laxus, Fried, Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin were silent. This was because they knew what this news meant to Raxus. Letting that kind of person who pays attention to trash become the guild leader? What's the point of this guild? Laxus was in a state of madness. This guild doesn't need weaklings. Since you don't understand, let me tell you. Chapter 422. It wasn't until the sky had completely darkened that the sounds of jubilation from Fairy Tale finally stopped and disappeared without a trace. Kacha. In a room on the top floor of Fairy Tale, the door was opened with a soft sound. Mira and Lisanna each held one of Noah's arms and carefully helped Noah, who was walking a little unsteadily, into the room. They gently put Noah on the bed before letting out a sigh of relief. Big brother Noah, you can't do this. Lisanna looked at Noah, who was lying on the bed with his originally dark and deep eyes filled with haziness. He even reached out his hand to cover his head. Lisanna panted and complained to Noah in a complaining tone. Undoubtedly, you don't drink often. And you don't even drink at all. How can you drink so much today? Ugh. Noah moved his body as if he wanted to say something. But in the end, he gave up because of the dizziness in his head. He covered his head and made a sound that didn't make any sound. It couldn't be helped. Noah really drank too much today. Almost from the start of Makarov's banquet in the morning, Noah had been toasted by his companions in Fairy Tale, one by one. Among them, some were sincerely offering their blessings to Noah. People like Naz, Gray, Elfman, and the others, who didn't usually drink, made an exception and drank a little today. It was to offer their blessings to Noah. Naturally, it was inevitable that they would toast to Noah. On the other hand, some of them were purely evil and wanted to make fun of Noah. For example, Kana, Makao, Wakaba, Jet, Troy, and the others, who were all older members. Just to see Noah make a fool of himself, or just for the fun, or even because a popular girl like Mira was snatched away by Noah. They all toasted Noah, looking like they wouldn't give up until they got Noah drunk. Then, there were people like Lucy, Lebby, and Alusha who followed the surrounding atmosphere in a state of confusion and toasted Noah. As a result, throughout the day, Noah was constantly toasted. He kept drinking. The heavens took pity on him. Before this, Noah didn't drink at all. Today he was forced to drink so much wine, even more than Kana's wine barrel. If it wasn't for Noah's extraordinary physique, at this moment, he probably wouldn't just feel a little dizzy, causing him to become drunk. Well, Lisanna, you don't have to blame Noah. Noah is so happy. Mira seemed to be worried about Noah. She sat on the edge of the bed and gently patted Noah's chest while wiping Noah's face with a handkerchief. Just like a wife who was taking care of her husband, who had gotten drunk while socializing outside. Moreover, this is all due to the good intentions of our companions in the guild. Noah is so gentle. It's normal for her not to reject him. But he really drank too much. Looking at Noah, who seemed to be very uncomfortable, a pained expression appeared on Lisanna's face. Big brother Noah didn't drink before. That's true. Mira also smiled bitterly, but still used an extremely gentle method. He helped Noah soothe his breathing and wipe his face. If this happens again, we have to stop it. Yes. Lisanna nodded heavily and sat on the edge of the bed. She gently patted Noah's chest. After a while, she seemed to have thought of something, and her face turned slightly red. Then, with big brother Noah in this state, does someone have to stay behind to take care of him tonight? Mira was stunned when she heard Lisanna's words. She then looked at Lisanna with amusement. Do you want to stay behind to accompany Noah tonight? Big sister Mira. Lisanna said to Mira as if she was throwing a tantrum. Big sister Mira. Are you okay with Big Brother Noah staying alone in the guild like this? That's true. Mira immediately held her face in distress. Tonight, you should stay here to look after Noah. Lisanna was stunned. Big sister Mira, are you going to stay too? Mira blinked her beautiful big eyes. Or do you want to stay here alone and do something with Noah that I can't see? No. Lisanna felt a little guilty. In fact, Mira was also feeling a little shy. Being alone with Noah. This pair of sisters who were infatuated with Noah would definitely be happy to see that. However, if they were alone, it meant that they could do something that only lovers could do. Women all yearned for the love of their beloved men. Both Mira and Lisanna yearned for intimacy with Noah. However, this pair of sisters seemed to have thought of something that was not suitable for children and raised the level of intimacy by many levels. That was why they became shy. Although they knew that the other party had already given their hearts and minds to Noah, neither Mira nor Lisanna revealed this matter. They deliberately pretended to be confused. If they were to reveal it openly, it would be too embarrassing. However, the two bashful girls didn't know how tempting their blushing and bashful appearance was to a man who had already tasted their beauty and fallen into a half-conscious state. With two short screams, Mira and Lisanna felt themselves being pulled by someone. Then with a forceful tug, they fell to the ground. In the next moment, a man with a strong masculine aura and a strong smell of alcohol turned over and pressed the two girls under him. His body temperature rose slightly, causing his body to be scorching hot. Noah, brother Noah? Only then did Mira and Lisanna react. Looking at Noah, who was lying on top of them with a sinister look on his face due to his drunken stupor, they let out another cry of surprise. The one closest to Noah was Mira. That was why Noah, who had been attracted by Mira's cry, turned to look at her slightly opened mouth. Ugh! Shortly after, a pained sound came from Mira's mouth. It was the sound of Mila's lips being roughly covered by Noah's mouth. Ugh! Mira subconsciously closed her eyes. But she did not forget the fact that her younger sister was watching. She immediately whimpered in an attempt to avoid Noah's kiss. However, before she could succeed, her lips were pried open by a skillful force, and her tongue was captured. Ugh! TSK! Ugh! Mira's body trembled slightly, and she was at a loss for what to do. Sounds of lips and tongue intertwining could be heard from the corner of her mouth. Lisanna, who saw all this, was stunned and could not react at all. With 2 layers of clothes between them, Noah could clearly feel the softness of their bodies. Coupled with the fact that he was touching Mira's lips and tongue, an indescribably wonderful feeling was transmitted to Noah's nerves along with the fragrance of a young girl. Noah captured Mira's delicate tongue and entangled it even more tightly with it. Mira could only use a strength that could not even kill a mosquito, as if she wanted to break free from Noah's intimacy. However, her cheeks were already flushed red, and her body trembled subconsciously. Her large breasts were pressed tightly against Noah's body, and she subconsciously used her tongue to cater to him, while gently twisting her body. This kind of inadvertent seduction naturally made Noah's emotions even more aroused, and he became even more engrossed in the kiss. Soft gasps could be heard from Noah and Mira's lips. Noah had already entered a state of intoxication from the double meaning, and he could not help but feel a wave of heat surge up his body. He held Mira and Lisanna tightly in front of him and reached for their soft breasts, kneading them. The 2 sisters of the Strauss family trembled heavily at the same time. Ugh! Mira, who was being hugged and kissed, could only let out an unclear trembling sound. Lisanna, who was lying under Noah in a daze, let out a clear cry. The feeling of her chest being ravaged made her react, and she realized what kind of situation she was in. Her beautiful face suddenly became incomparably red, and she got up in a panic. Big brother Noah, don't! Mira and Lisanna had never tried to serve Noah in the true sense of sisters. Now that they were aware of Noah's intentions, the 2 sisters were panicking. However, no matter how panicked they were, they could not escape from tonight's situation. Not long after, the clothes of the 2 girls fell to the ground amidst a series of delicate cries. The sound of panting sounded like music, Chapter 423. Ugh! When Noah woke up from his sleep, a burst of indescribable headache and a comfortable feeling assaulted him at the same time. Noah, who was wrapped in two extremely contradictory feelings, squeezed out a sound from his throat. My head hurts. Clutching his head, Noah's expression was so bitter that it could darken. But my body feels so comfortable. Patting his head, Noah faintly opened his eyes. Immediately, he was startled and revealed an astonished expression. Woo! Letting out a sound like a puppy acting coquettishly to its owner, two white girls snuggled up to Noah's left and right and fell into a deep sleep. The white color here referred to the long and short hair color of the two young girls, as well as the rosy white color of the two young girls' bodies. It also referred to the extremely alluring skin color of the two young girls' bodies. At this very moment, Mira and Lisanna, the two sisters, were lying by Noah's side, tightly snuggling in his embrace. Their heads were pillowed on Noah's chest, and their beautiful faces carried an intoxicating blush as they slept peacefully. Because of this, the two girls' huge softness, which ordinary women couldn't compare to, were tightly pressed against Noah's chest under the blanket, giving Noah a feeling of softness that other things couldn't compare to. The reason why Noah felt so comfortable was all because of this. Being tightly surrounded by two delicate bodies that could make all men drool, no matter who it was, they would feel very comfortable. These two white girls. Naturally, they were the sisters of the Strauss family. Looking at Myra's and Lisanna's enviable white skin and seductive little faces, which faintly revealed from the blanket, they slept peacefully. Noah quivered, and all the memories in his mind returned in an instant. Yes, Noah still remembered what happened last night. Although he had been forced to drink by almost all the archmages in fairy tale, his body was much stronger than his own. However, Noah's body was much stronger than the average person's. Even though it was the first time he drank so much, he was still half drunk and half sober, maintaining half of his consciousness. Thus, Noah still remembered what happened last night in a daze. The memory of forcefully pulling Mira and Lisanna onto his bed. While Mira and Lisanna were extremely bashful, they stripped the two girls of their clothes without giving them any chance to explain. The memory of Mira and Lisanna pressing down on the two sisters, despite their resistance. The memory of hugging these two beautiful girls, listening to their soft moans, and entangling with Mira and Lisanna for an entire night. These memories all returned to Noah's mind. Together with the physical pleasure brought about by last night's entanglement, Noah's heart was shaken. As the saying goes, a gentle home is a hero's grave. Being embraced by the gentleness of these two little demonesses, no matter how firm Noah's heart was, it was unavoidable that it would melt. Especially when he thought of the pleasure brought about by last night's entanglement, Noah almost didn't want to get out of bed. He might as well hug his two future wives and sleep like a log. Truly a love-hate relationship. Noah reached out his hand with such feelings. He gently smoothed out the bangs on Mira and Lisanna's foreheads that were slightly sweaty due to their hard work all night, leaving a light kiss on each of their foreheads. This action was very gentle and shouldn't have woken up those who were sleeping soundly. Lisanna, who appeared to be a little sluggish, was indeed still sleeping soundly, but Mira seemed to have sensed something. Her eyelids trembled slightly, and she opened her eyes, which were filled with moisture. Her eyes, which were still a little blurry, opened. Noah, who was just about to get out of bed, was surprised to see Mira open her eyes. Sorry, did I wake you up? Oh, Mira raised her hazy eyes and stared at Noah. After a while, she gave him a dazed smile. Allah, are you awake? Seeing Mira's dazed appearance, Noah knew that this girl's hidden nature was showing its existence. She still didn't realize what was going on, and didn't remember the absurdity of last night. At that moment, Noah mischievously moved the hand that was hidden under the blanket, and gently stroked one of Myra's round breasts. Feeling the strange sensation on her chest, Mira finally woke up. She looked at Noah, who was looking at her with a teasing expression, and then glanced at Lisanna, who was sleeping soundly on the other side. Her face, which was originally a little red, slowly became rosy, and she even puffed up her cheeks. Noah, you're very naughty. You don't like it? Noah lightly kissed Myra's sweaty red face, I'm very willing to be naughty to you. That won't do. Mira pressed her slender and beautiful index finger against Noah's forehead and pushed Noah's face away. She was fuming with anger as she spoke. I already said I don't want it. And you're still being naughty. I'll get angry. You'll really get angry. Noah raised an eyebrow and smiled faintly. His hand also moved back and forth on Myra's body. Then I'll have to be naughty all the time. Feeling Noah's naughty hand, Mira blushed and slapped it away. She glared fiercely at Noah. But that appearance was cute no matter how one looked at it. I'll really get angry. That's why I have to be naughty all the time, Noah said matter-of-factly. Who asked Mira to be so cute when she's angry? Hearing this, Myra's cheeks puffed up more and more, and a trace of indignation appeared in her hazy eyes. However, she didn't resist Noah's naughty hands anymore. Instead, she snuggled in Noah's arms and let him play his naughty tricks. In the past, when I wanted to hear you say that, you wouldn't say it. Of course, Mira was referring to what happened 2 years ago before Noah left this world. Back then, Noah had met Mira, Elfman, and Lisanna in that small village. After some trouble, the 3 siblings, who had nowhere else to go, were led to Fairy Tale. Before that, Mira had always felt guilty towards Elfman and Lisanna. After all, Mira had always thought that she was the one who had caused Elfman and Lisanna to fall to such a state. If it weren't for the fact that they had run into a church where demons were causing trouble and were possessed by them, they wouldn't have been chased away by others. If they hadn't been chased away, Elfman and Lisanna wouldn't have had to live a homeless life with Mira. That was what Mira thought until she met Noah. Therefore, meeting Noah, and the fact that her fate had changed because of Noah made Myra's guilt towards her siblings turn into gratitude towards Noah. Furthermore, she was still a child at the time, and because of her ignorance towards relationships, it was easy for her to become diligent and engraved in her heart. Thus, after spending some time together, Mira gradually became attracted to Noah. If not for this, as one of the few geniuses in Fairy Tale, who had become an S-rank archmage before reaching adulthood, Mira might not have taken a fancy to Noah. However, the truth was the truth. Mira had indeed fallen in love with Noah when she was young. Mira must have always wanted to hear Noah's affirmation of a woman's charm since she was young. Understanding this, Noah suddenly felt a strong sense of pity for Mira. I'm sorry. Driven by such emotions, Noah's hand that was playing tricks on Mira turned to embrace her slender waist, and he hugged her tightly. I've made you wait for so long. Mira reluctantly went along with Noah's strength and hugged Noah tightly, revealing her usual gentle and enchanting smile. It's all right. After saying that, Mira raised her hand and looked at the engagement ring on her finger with a blissful smile. It doesn't matter anymore. That's right, it didn't matter anymore. After all, the waiting had finally paid off. That was why Mira didn't have any regrets, nor did she complain. There was only endless satisfaction. This made Noah's heart melt, and he smiled. Ugh. Lisanna turned around and let out a sleep-talking sound. Big brother Noah. Noah and Mira looked at each other and smiled. Hugging Mira and Lisanna tightly, Noah kissed his 2 fiancés' foreheads again, enjoying the rare moment of peace. Chapter 424. Why is it so late? It doesn't make sense. Mira-chan and Lisanna-chan aren't here. Where did they go? There's never been 2 people like this before. Are they not here yet? I'm hungry. In the hall on the first floor of Fairy Tale, some of the idlers in the guild were gathered together. However, almost everyone was sighing, whispering, and even brazenly making a ruckus. This was because until now, the 2 most famous girls in Fairy Tale had not arrived yet. This was indeed something that had never happened before. In the past, even if something happened, at least one of them would be present. But today, Mira and Lisanna were not present, which made many people complain. Mira and Lisanna's roles in Fairy Tale were similar to that of waiters. Occasionally, they would help Makarov with the guild's affairs and miscellaneous tasks. They could be said to be 2 indispensable members of the guild. Now that they suddenly did not come, even if there were no guild affairs and chores to be done, the guild members who were waiting for the beautiful and cute girls to serve them food and drink also lost their energy. Under such circumstances, Noah came down from upstairs. When they saw Noah, many of the magic shooter's spirits were lifted, and they started to shout, "Yo, Noah, where are your two fiancés? Why haven't they come yet? We're all hungry, and we can't order any wine. I always feel so lonely. Hurry up and call your two fiancés over." Yes, yes. Hearing the teasing voices from his companions, Noah could not help but feel guilty. Could he tell them that the two fiancés they were talking about were now lying in Noah's room to rest, because they were tormented by Noah last night? Presumably, in the next moment, Noah would be surrounded by all the male members who were envious of him, and would be full of resentment and make him drunk again. When he thought of this, Noah's head that was faintly aching from the hangover felt dizzy again, and he could not help but speak loudly. "You still say that the banquet was so lively yesterday, but in the end, the ones who served tea were Mira and Lisanna. Who knows how tired they are now?" Saying such a flawless lie, Noah confidently announced, "Today, Mira and Lisanna asked for leave. I will let them rest to the extent that they will not wake up to work until tomorrow. So what you want to eat and drink, you'd better think of it yourself." When these words came out, there was an uproar. "Don't, Noah, you can't be so cruel. Although she is your fiancée, she is also our guild's signature girl. My Mira sauce." "What? Mira sauce? She is already someone else's fiancée. Heavens! I don't have the motivation to work today." "Yes, yes." Suddenly, a group of fellows who were not serious all day began to make a racket. Their cries were miserable. Those who did not know would definitely think that someone in their family had died, causing many onlookers to look at them with disdain. Ignoring the noise of the people around him, Noah walked into the hall, looked around, and fixed his gaze in one direction. There, Elisha had arrived early, and was sitting in front of a table. She was not wearing her usual armor, but an ordinary inner shirt and a blue pleated skirt. This might have been strange in the past, but ever since the collapse of the Paradise Tower, Zio, Simon, Willie, and Mariana regained their freedom and went out to travel. Elisha no longer often showed up in armor. Occasionally she would be like this, going into battle lightly. However, at this moment, Elisha was seriously flipping through a book. This scene surprised Noah. Elisha is reading a book? This is really rare. With this thought, Noah quietly walked behind Elisha and looked at the book in front of her through Elisha. When he confirmed the content of the book, his expression was strange. This was because Elisha was not flipping through a book, but a magazine. It was a magazine that displayed beautiful wedding dresses on almost every page. In other words, Elisha was so focused that she did not even notice Noah approaching her from behind. What she was looking at was not profound knowledge, but just wedding dresses. This made Noah recall Elisha's behavior when Mira and Lisanna announced their engagement to him yesterday. That strange look proved that Elisha did not seem to have any immunity to the word marriage. In addition, Elisha was still looking at the wedding dresses. Was it for Mira and Lisanna's reference? Noah clearly said yesterday that he was only temporarily engaged with Mira and Lisanna, and would not get married immediately. Therefore, Elisha should not be looking at it for Mira and Lisanna's reference. Then there was only one answer. Elisha seemed to have a strong interest in marriage. Could it be that she was looking forward to getting married? Or like Lisanna, she was looking forward to the scene of her being a bride? Could Elisha be so cute? At this moment, Noah resisted the urge to laugh and patted Elisha's shoulder. Whoa! Noah just patted her lightly, but Elisha immediately screamed as if she had met a ghost. She jumped up and turned her head, looking at Noah with a lingering fear. Noah! Noah! It's me! The corner of Noah's mouth twitched. Why do you have such a big reaction? No, nothing. Elisha shook her head exaggeratedly. It's really nothing. Is it? Noah looked at Elisha with a faint smile. But not only is your expression not convincing at all, it makes your behavior very suspicious. It's nothing like that. Elisha's face tightened, as if she wanted to return to her usual expression. However, she did not know if it was because she was too nervous, but her expression was stiff. I'm still the same as usual. You don't even believe your own words, right? Noah glanced at the wedding dress magazine on the table and asked amusedly, "Are you looking at wedding dresses?" No. No. This time, not only Alesha's expression, but even her tone became stiff. Just casually looking. Casually looking. Noah continued to laugh, and his laughter became more and more uncontrollable. Yes, yes. Alesha continued to pretend, but she was a little guilty. Just as Noah and Alesha continued to be in a stalemate, the door of the guild opened. "Everyone, good morning." In the cheerful greeting, Lucy walked in from outside. "Lucy." Alesha seemed to have seen her savior, and quickly changed the topic to Lucy. "Are you alone?" "Yes." Naz and Gray seemed to be still sleeping, because they drank at the banquet yesterday. Lucy walked in from outside, looked around and made such a puzzled voice. There seemed to be fewer people today. After Lucy said this, Noah and Alesha also noticed this. "It seems to be a lot fewer than usual." Alesha finally recovered her usual heroic appearance, glanced around and frowned. "Yesterday we were still having a banquet here. Today Mira and Lisanna are not here. Without the consent of the two people appointed by the president, even if we accept the mission, we can't immediately execute it. Where did everyone go? Could it be that, like Naz and Gray, they were all drunk yesterday?" Lucy raised this speculation. "So everyone is resting at home? Maybe that's the case." Noah narrowed his eyes, and a trace of thoughtfulness gradually appeared in his eyes. "But I don't know why, I always feel that it's not the case." When this sentence fell from Noah's mouth, a voice full of arrogance sounded from the second floor. "Isn't that good?" Hearing this voice, Noah paused, then raised his head and looked at the second floor. The next moment, a man in a fur collar, leaning his hand against the railing on the second floor, and looking at Noah with an extremely unruly expression, was imprinted in Noah's eyes. Seeing this person, Alesha's frown deepened, Lucy's expression became a little stiff, and even the noise in the guild disappeared. "Because that's Laxus." Chapter 425. The guild, which had been extremely noisy just a second ago, suddenly seemed to have been cut off by someone, and the noise disappeared without a trace. Every guild member obediently shut their mouths when Laxus appeared. This was not out of respect for Laxus. It was just a subconscious action. After all, to the members of Fairy Tale, Laxus may more or less represent the feeling of a comrade, but more of the feeling of danger. Everyone felt that Laxus was very dangerous. It was like a class full of obedient students suddenly having a delinquent in all aspects appear out of nowhere. Everyone felt that this person was dangerous, not because this person would hurt them, but because they did not want to interact with such a person and get involved in unnecessary trouble. Thus, under normal circumstances, when Laxus appeared, other than a few people, no one would open their mouth to speak unless something unexpected happened. Thus, under such circumstances, the only one present who would fearlessly confront Laxus, other than Noah, was Alesha. "Laxus!" Alesha took a step forward, her sharp eyes staring at Laxus, who was leaning against the railing on the second floor. "What do you mean by that? This sentence again. Do you have to ask me what I mean every time I speak before you understand?" Laxus glanced at Alesha, a trace of mockery appearing in his eyes. "It's too early for a mere Alesha to question me. What did you say?" Alesha did not expect Laxus to find fault with her the moment he opened his mouth, her delicate face showing traces of anger. Just as she was about to say something, she was stopped by Noah. "Then do I have the right to question you?" Noah put one hand on Alesha's shoulder. His gaze had already moved to Laxus. "Laxus, what did you mean by that sentence just now? TSK, you haven't even become the guild leader, and you're already putting on airs." As if deliberately going against Noah, Laxus's tone became even more unruly. Even his eyes became irritable. "My dear brother, of all people, why did you have to learn from that old man? All day long, you care about those weak people who don't need to exist, trash. If they disappear, then they disappear. Is there a need to pay special attention to them? You..." Understanding Laxus's meaning, the anger on Alesha's face became more and more intense. Really bad. Even Lucy could not help but let out such a mutter, her face full of resistance towards Laxus. That kind of person, why is his companion in the guild? Regarding Alusha and Lucy's words, Noah's gaze, he was still staring closely at Lax's his eyes. Intuition told Noah that this matter was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. At the beginning, didn't you not notice that those weak people who weren't here didn't come today? That's enough to prove that the weak don't need to have any sense of existence, right? Lax's mouth gradually curved into a happy arc. It seemed that only Noah was left in his eyes. Don't bother with those trash who only drag us down. It's better to just let all those useless people in the guild disappear. Saying such a sentence, Lax's gaze swept across everyone below. Those who met Lax's gaze all lowered their heads, including Lucy. Except for Noah and Alusha, no one present dared to look at Lax's. Humph. Lax's curled his lips in boredom and made such a declaration. Fairy tale does not need weaklings. You will understand. Leaving this sentence, Lax's turned around and left everyone's sight. It was only at this time that his companions in the guild began to whisper. What, that guy? That's really annoying. Why did that guy have to be an S-rank magic shooter and the grandson of the guild leader? That's right. Fortunately, the next guild leader is Noah. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to join a guild that was inherited by that guy. I feel the same. Similar conversations like this began to ring out from the surrounding crowd. However, probably because Lax's had not gone far, and they were worried that Lax's would hear them, the guild members lowered their voices. But Noah, Alusha and Lucy still heard it clearly. In this regard, Lucy expressed her agreement. That kind of inhumane guy as the guild leader, I really can't imagine. Lucy said to Noah excitedly. Noah, you must not lose to that kind of guy. Let that kind of guy become the guild leader. The guild leader already said yesterday that the next guild leader of Fairy Tale is Noah. Since the guild leader said so, most likely, it will not change. Alusha calmed down and stared in the direction that Lax's had left. It's just that I have an ominous feeling. Hearing this, Noah fell silent, because in Noah's heart he had the same feeling. Don't bother about that guy. Lucy, on the other hand, had been very indignant. She sat down, and when she saw the wedding dress magazine on the table, she immediately picked it up out of curiosity. Isn't this a wedding dress? Could it be that Noah is choosing a wedding dress for Mira and Lasana's wedding in the future? But the wedding date hasn't been set yet, right? No, it's not like that. The serious expression on Alusha's face collapsed in an instant. She blushed and stuttered. Huh? Lucy was stunned. So you're saying that it's not Noah who's watching, but you, Alusha? Ahahaha. Noah shook his head when he saw that the atmosphere in the guild had returned to normal. Hopefully, I'm just overthinking things. The next day, in Noah's room, Noah, who had just gotten up, hugged the shoulders of Mira and Lisana, who were chatting in their own room, and lay down. Mira and Lisana snuggled up in Noah's arms as they flipped through a magazine in front of Noah, conversing with each other with relish. This one is so beautiful. Really, I like this one better. Mira and Lisana were flipping through the magazine with gusto. It was the same one that Alusha had been reading yesterday, because she bumped into Lucy when she went downstairs, and Lucy casually mentioned this matter. Lisana, who was looking forward to being a bride, borrowed the magazine from the uncomfortable Alusha and took it out to talk about it with Mira during her free time. Not only did they discuss it with each other, but they also asked Noah about the wedding dress they liked. Hey, big brother Noah. Lisana pointed at one of the wedding dresses in the magazine and asked excitedly, what do you think of me wearing this on our wedding day? I like this one. It was rare for Mira to be as stubborn as Lisana when it came to wedding dresses. She pointed at a wedding dress on the other side. Noah, what do you think? I think they all look good. Noah naturally understood that his two fiancés were so enthusiastic because they could marry him. Thus, Noah showed sufficient attention. But I think Mira looks better in this one. As for Lisana, I think she'll look better in this one. Seeing that Noah was paying so much attention to the wedding dress, Mira and Lisana seemed to be very happy. Even their spirits seemed to have risen. Noah, look at this one. Big brother Noah, look at this one too. See if it suits me. Thus, the man and the two women began chatting about the wedding dresses. The smiles on Mira and Lasana's faces never disappeared. Even the surrounding atmosphere became a little warm. Under such circumstances, Mira and Lisana even forgot that they had to go downstairs to work. One had to know that Mira and Lisana did not go to the guild yesterday at Noah's request. Now there must be many people looking forward to Mira and Lasana's appearance. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Noah. At that moment, a hurried voice sounded from outside the door. The door to Noah's room was pushed open. Under the shocked gazes of Noah, Mira, and Lisana, Elisha quickly walked into the room and said with a solemn expression, "Something happened." Chapter 426. Grandpa. Leading Mira, Lisana, and Elisha downstairs, Noah immediately saw Makarov sitting at the bar. Then, he noticed the strange atmosphere that pervaded Fairy Tale. At this moment, the number of people in the guild could only be described as pitiful. Noah counted and found that there were only a dozen or so people in the guild. This was simply inconceivable to Fairy Tale. After all, even though Fairy Tale didn't take in as many members as Phantom Lord did, and even opened up branches everywhere, and had all kinds of people in the guild, as the #1 guild in the Kingdom of Fiori, Fairy Tale had at least a few hundred members, if not 1,000. And yet there were only a dozen or so people in the guild. Wasn't this inconceivable? With yesterday's events still fresh in his mind, Noah exchanged glances with Mira, Lisana, and Elisha before walking towards Makarov, who was sitting at the bar. Anyone could see how dangerous Makarov was sitting at the bar. That's right. It was dangerous. At this moment, the mana belonging to the 10 great saint archmages that could shake space revolved around Makarov's body in an extremely obscure manner, making the space around Makarov seem to have suddenly become heavier and extremely heavy. As for Makarov, he lowered his head and silently looked at the entire guild. His aged eyes flickered with barely detectable rage and irritation. None of the remaining members of the dozen or so guilds dared to open their mouths, causing the atmosphere to become strangely quiet. However, no one would blame Makarov. It was only natural for Makarov to behave this way. To Makarov, the members of Fairy Tale were almost all his children, and the guild was Makarov's home. His children's whereabouts were unknown, and the originally lively home had become extremely quiet. It was already very good that Makarov didn't fly into a rage on the spot. But even so, Makarov still fell into a state where he could explode at the slightest provocation. The heavy magic that pervaded his body made Mira and Elisha, the two active S-ranked archmages, unable to breathe. Lasana's beautiful face paled, and she almost knelt on the ground. This was the magic of one of the 10 Saint Magi. It had to be known that Makarov's ranking among the 10 great Saint Magi was considered to be near the top. In this way, even if Makarov didn't completely detonate his magic, the trace of magic that leaked out was enough to intimidate most S-ranked archmages. Therefore, other than Noah, no one else was able to remain calm in the face of Makarov's magic power that seemed to explode around him. Raising his hand, Noah gently hugged the pale-faced Lisana, and then braved the magic that was rolling out from Makarov's body, and came in front of Makarov. "Grandfather." "Noah?" Makarov didn't even raise his head, as he spoke with a gloomy expression. "Is there any problem on your side?" "Mira, Lisana, and I are all fine." Noah shook his head. However, Mira and Lisana just contacted home, and found that Elfman wasn't around. "I'm afraid that he's also missing." "Even Elfman is missing?" Makarov's expression grew more and more unsightly. What in the world happened? What had happened? He believed that no one present didn't want to know the answer. And Noah finally confirmed that the ominous feeling he and Elisha had was indeed true. Since yesterday, the members of Fairy Tale had been disappearing one after another, and there was no news of their whereabouts. It wasn't just Elfman. Naz Gray, Hubby and Lucy, Lebby Kana, and the others who had shown their faces in the guild had all disappeared without a trace. Sensing that something was wrong, Makarov immediately went to the guild and sent people to check the houses of the members who hadn't shown up. In the end, he couldn't find a single person at home. In other words, just like yesterday, the Fairy Tale Guild had lost a few members today. Moreover, it was a crushing loss, to the point that there were only a dozen or so members left. Why would so many members of Fairy Tale suddenly disappear for no reason? Even a fool could guess that something had happened. Brother Elfman, and everyone. Under such circumstances, Lysana worriedly asked the question that everyone was concerned about. There shouldn't be anything wrong, right? Everyone present was silent. This was because no one could give a 100% answer to this question. Who in the world is it? Alusha clenched her fists tightly. A strong light bloomed from her body, and she changed into her usual armor, revealing an extremely dangerous expression. Who on earth is targeting Fairy Tale? Hearing Alusha's angry words, Mira just hugged Lysana tightly and fell into silence. Noah once again looked around the entire guild. Looking at the scene where there were only a dozen people left, his eyes grew colder and colder. Originally, I thought that it was already very rare for a Phantom Lord to stand up and die, but I didn't expect that in this world, there would never be a lack of people who had lived for too long. Could it be that if it was just a Phantom Lord, there would be no way for the whole world to know the consequences of provoking Fairy Tale? Moreover, this time, it wasn't as simple as touching the guild's buildings, but directly touching the people in Fairy Tale. Not to mention Noah. Even Makarov wouldn't let this matter rest. But who else would want to provoke the Fairy Tale? In such a heavy atmosphere, an arrogant laugh suddenly rang out. Oh, so many of them have disappeared? Hearing this, everyone raised their heads and looked at the second floor of the guild building. Soon after, everyone's expression changed. A bunch of weak and pitiful people. Disappearing just like that makes the whole guild much more pleasing to the eye, Laxus said arrogantly under everyone's gazes. Why don't we just ignore them? Old man. Laxus. Makarov glared at Laxus, the veins on his temples bulging as he growled. Are you trying to make me angry? You. In a situation where he couldn't even ensure the safety of his companions, Laxus still dared to provoke him. Alusha couldn't take it anymore. Mira and Lysana also glared at Laxus, their faces filled with malice. Laxus. Only Noah stared at Laxus's arrogant face. The coldness in his eyes made Mira and the others' hearts palpitate. This matter can't have anything to do with you, right? Everyone suddenly fell silent. Makarov, Alusha, Mira, Lysana, and the others, who were originally furious, were all shocked by Noah's sudden words. What did Noah mean? Was he suspecting Laxus? Facing Noah's cold gaze, the smile on Laxus's face grew wider and wider, but there wasn't a single trace of a smile in his eyes. Who knows? Seeing that Laxus didn't deny it, the remaining people in the guild looked at each other. Laxus, Makarov said in a low voice with a heavy expression. You should know that this is not a joke, right? Joke? Laxus glanced at Makarov and sneered. Unfortunately, I've never joked. After saying that, Laxus completely ignored everyone present. He didn't leave any explanation, nor did he make any obvious denial. Just like that, he turned around and left. Seeing this, everyone fell silent. Chapter 427. Seeing Laxus's figure disappear in the direction of the second floor, the remaining members of Fairy Tale began to whisper to each other. It can't really be Laxus, right? It can't be, right? But hasn't that guy always hated the people in the guild? Moreover, the guild leader has already announced that Noah will be the next leader of Fairy Tale. Hasn't Laxus always wanted to inherit this guild? It's not impossible for him to fly into a rage out of humiliation and do something like that, right? Now that you mention it, all of a sudden, the remaining members of the guild began to speculate one after another, echoing throughout the entire guild. Big Brother Noah, Lysana said hesitantly. Is it really Laxus? Even Laxus wouldn't do something like that, right? Mira said somewhat gloomily. We're all companions. Why are you suspecting Laxus? Even Alusha couldn't seem to believe that Laxus was related to the disappearance of the members of the guild, who hadn't arrived yet. So she asked Noah. Did you find out anything? Makarov also looked at Noah, his eyes filled with heartache and an unprecedented seriousness. If the disappearance of the members of the guild really had something to do with Lax's, then as Lax's grandfather, Makarov felt that he had to take responsibility for everything. Facing the gazes of the crowd, Noah frowned and waved his hand. Don't worry, I'm just testing Lax's. Although I have my suspicions, I haven't really found out what Lax's has done. Hearing this, Makarov breathed a sigh of relief, and the expressions of the members of the guild also softened imperceptibly. Seeing this scene, Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. Noah didn't say anything, although he hadn't found out what Lax's had done. After the probing and understanding of Lax's, Noah still felt that Lax's was still a suspect. After all, Lax's mentality was abnormally twisted. After knowing that Noah would become the next guild leader of Fairy Tale, it was possible that he would do something irrational. Moreover, Lax's had always hated the so-called weaklings. The members of the guild who had gone missing were simply a thorn in his side to him. Who knew if he would think of getting rid of them? If it was Lax's, it wasn't impossible for him to do something like that. With such a heavy thought, Noah shook his head and turned to the remaining members of the guild. The most important thing right now is to find the whereabouts of the missing people as soon as possible. Let's move out together and search Magnolia first. After all, this phenomenon only started yesterday. Even if someone has captured our companions, they won't be able to transport them anywhere in a day. With that said, Noah looked around at everyone present. Remember, no matter what the existence that can make our companions go missing is, since even Naz, Gray, and Elfman can't resist, it's best that we don't act alone. At least form a team of 5, understand? Got it. The members of the guild nodded and formed their own teams. Then, they left the guild and went to Magnolia to search for their companions' whereabouts. In the blink of an eye, only Noah, Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and Makarov were left in the guild. No, there was still one person left. That. The somewhat bashful young girl spoke with a hint of panic in her voice. What should I do? Noah only just noticed that there was another person present. When he saw the person's full appearance, he was surprised. Julian? You're here too? Yes. Seeing Noah's gaze turn to him, Julian's head shrank back, as if he was still a little afraid. But unlike last time, he mustered up his courage. Julian wants to help, but he doesn't know what to do. Noah, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Julian had just joined Fairy Tale not long ago, so he wasn't familiar with many of the people in Fairy Tale. Therefore, even if he wanted to help Julian, who had yet to remember the faces of everyone in Fairy Tale, couldn't help at all. Julian. Makarov stepped forward. Where's Gadjaloo? Is Gadjaloo missing as well? Julian doesn't know. Mr. Gadjaloo doesn't often interact with others. The Aqua girl seemed to have finally found something she could do, and her expression became a little excited. Julian, try to get in touch with Mr. Gadjaloo. Okay. Makarov nodded heavily. I'll have to trouble you. Yes. After replying, Zhubian's body directly turned into water and sprinkled on the ground, disappearing without a trace. Looking at the place where Julian disappeared, Makarov's expression became uncertain. Lax's, is it really you? Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the others chose to keep quiet, trying not to provoke Makarov. Grandpa, only Noah said to Makarov after sighing. Let's go and see if there are any clues. I'll have to trouble you to take care of the guild. Go. Makarov reacted and waved his hand decisively. I'm enough here. At the very least, I can activate the defense system you left behind. So at least nothing will happen here. Noah, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha nodded one after another. Then they looked at each other and walked out of the guild. As soon as they came out of the guild, Alusha immediately asked, where should we start looking now? Let's go to Naz, Gray, and Lucy's house first. Noah answered without hesitation. Obviously, he already had an idea. Naz and Gray were at home yesterday. Lucy also stayed in the guild until nighttime before leaving. If they were really taken away by someone, then it's very likely that they were taken away at home. Let's go to their house and take a look. Maybe we can find some clues. Then let's go home too. Mira quickly said. Elfman may also be taken away at home. We may also find some clues at home. You guys? Noah hesitated. If it's just the two of you, will it be okay? Brother Noah, don't worry. Lisanna patted her full chest and pretended to be cheerful. I won't mention it for now. You know what Sister Mira is like when she's serious. With Sister Mira, we'll be fine. That's true. Elisha nodded in agreement. With Mira around, at least they won't disappear without a sound like Naz and the others. Hearing that, Noah lowered his head and muttered to himself for a while. After a while, he nodded reluctantly. Then be careful. If you find anything, go back to the guild first. We'll gather there. Okay. The two nodded at the same time, turned around, and walked quickly in the direction of their houses. Then whose house should we go to first? Elisha looked at Noah. The closest house to here is Naz and Habi's house. It's on the other side of the forest. Let's go to Lucy's house first. Noah had a different opinion. Lucy only left the guild last night. It's very likely that she went missing later than Naz and Gray. If there are any clues left behind, it's only one night. If it's not done by someone, it won't be easy to eliminate the clues. So let's start looking from there. Understood, Alyssa said in a strong and powerful voice. Her voice was filled with an extremely strong sense of self. If someone took them away, I'll let them know the consequences of stepping on the fairy tale's bottom line. Noah smiled indifferently and raised his head to look at the sky. The weather today was cloudy. The sky was always gray and covered by thick layers of dark clouds. It was like the calm before the storm, bringing with it a sense of oppression that made one's heart tremble. Chapter 428. In the corner of Magnolia, there was a river. Compared to Noah's secret base, which was the river in the forest, this river was not only much wider, but also much more lively. Because in this river from time to time, a boat would appear and pass by every place along the river. Lucy's house was on the opposite side of the river. It was a very ordinary house. According to Lucy herself, although this house was very ordinary, there was nothing wrong with it. Most importantly, the monthly rent was only 70,000 J, which was quite cost-effective. Therefore, when Lucy found out about this place, she did not hesitate to rent it. This reason more or less made people want to cry. However, compared to the girls' dormitory in Fairy Tale, Lucy still preferred this house. The reason was the same as the previous one, the problem of rent. The girls' dormitory in Fairy Tale costs 100,000 J per month, but this house only costs 70,000 J per month. For Lucy, this could be considered as saving a lot of money. As a member of the same team, Elisha often went in and out of Lucy's house, so she was quite familiar with Lucy's house. Therefore, under Elisha's lead, Noah speechlessly climbed into Lucy's house from the direction of the window. From this choice, Noah saw a fact. That is, when Elisha enters Lucy's house, she usually does not go through the front door. No, it should not only be Elisha. It is very likely that even Naz, Gray and the others are the same. Who knows? While he silently felt sad for Lucy in his heart, Noah's attention was attracted by everything that was imprinted on his senses in the next moment. This was an extremely ordinary room. The decoration of the room was not very luxurious, and it was full of a homey atmosphere, making people unable to tell that this was a place where a rich young lady lived. However, there was indeed a rich young lady living in this place. It was obvious that the room belonged to a young girl. Even the smell in the air was fragrant, making one's mind feel comfortable. The only factors that made people feel comfortable were the air and decoration in the room. However, there were also factors that made people feel bad. Noah was sure that it was definitely a bad factor that did not exist before last night. It was precisely this terrible factor that attracted Noah's attention. Noah's nerves instantly tensed up. He closed his eyes and activated his sensing ability. Like tentacles, it extended to the surroundings and enveloped Lucy's entire room. At this time, Noah could clearly feel the existence of traces of strange mana. It was a demonic power that seemed to have just emerged from some abyss, carrying an extremely dense aura of evil and darkness. Noah had only ever felt such evil and dark magic from one person, the guild leader of the Phantom Lord Joseph. Of course, Noah meant that the nature of the evil and dark manna was identical to Joseph's, not that the manna was identical to Joseph's. Unlike Joseph's, the traces of evil and dark manna that permeated Lucy's room seemed to be purer, and the aura inside was completely different from Joseph's. Therefore, the owner of these traces of evil and dark manna should be somewhat similar to Joseph in some aspects. For example, character. For example, magic. In short, this was definitely not the manna left behind by Lucy. And naturally, such manna could not have been left behind by Lax's. It seemed that, as Noah had guessed, the reason why Lucy and her party disappeared was entirely because someone had attacked them. This person should not be Lax's. At least, it would definitely not be Lax's himself. Although Lax's manna was also very special, that was because Lax's was a dragon slayer magic shooter. Like Naz Gajaloo and Wendy, he had unique and extremely destructive manna. And Lax's manna was definitely not such dark and evil manna. This made Noah frown involuntarily. What's wrong? Alicia was just about to search Lucy's room when she caught a glimpse of Noah, who was frowning with his eyes closed, and asked suspiciously, "Did you find anything?" "I found some residual manna." Noah did not hide it. He opened his eyes and spoke of his speculation. "That's not Lucy's manna, nor is it the manna of anyone I know." "You mean?" Alicia's expression froze. "Did someone really invade Lucy's room and take her away?" "As far as I'm concerned, this is the most likely possibility." Noah's brows were still tightly knitted. "It's just that I can only find that the residual manna in the air here has a very evil and dark nature. Other than that, I can't get any clues." "No, you've already got a very important clue," Alicia said loudly. "At least, you've helped us confirm that someone is indeed attacking Fairy Tale, and almost all of our guild's members have been taken away," Alicia said in a deep voice as she moved her arms that were wrapped in armor. "Since you can detect the residual manna here, can you detect where the owner of the manna is?" "No." Noah shook his head. "The other party must have used magic to capture Lucy, leaving traces of magic in this room, and then left. I can only feel the remnants of this strange magic in this room, and there's no trace of it anywhere else." After saying that, Noah looked at Alicia's heavy expression and softly comforted her. "Even so, I've already remembered the other party's manna aura. As long as the owner of this manna appears in front of me again, I'll definitely be able to discover his true identity. Unless he can change his own aura, otherwise he won't be able to hide it." "That's good." Alicia breathed a sigh of relief. "Then let's continue looking for clues." Noah nodded and went to Lucy's room with Alicia. Just as Noah and Alicia were making their way to Lucy's house, Mira and Lisanna were blocked on their way to their own house. Mira pulled Lisanna to her side, as if she was protecting her. She repeatedly swept her gaze at the person blocking her way with a sorrowful expression on her face. "Could it really be you guys? Are you the ones who kidnapped Big Brother Elfie and everyone in the guild?" Lisanna shouted angrily. "Hurry up and let everyone go." Thor's knights. The ones blocking Mira and Lisanna's way were none other than Rax's personal guards, the Thor Order. With Fried in the lead, Bikesro, Iba, and Jerlin stood on either side of him. The three of them were only looking at Mira, as if they were intentionally ignoring Lisanna's existence. Mira Jenny, Lisanna, Alba, who was holding a fan and covering the lower half of her face, called out, "You'd better come with us obediently. Laxus wants us to take you there." Bikesro stuck his tongue out and raised his hands in an exaggerated manner. "If you don't listen to me obediently, then I can only let my baby play with you. I suggest you don't resist. We don't want to fight you." Fried looked up and stared at Mira. "Even if the legendary demonkin were to fight against us, even if they could win, you don't have the confidence to protect your sister in battle, do you?" Myra's expression changed slightly. "Despicable bastard," Lisanna said angrily. "Fight Sister Mira if you dare." "Apologies, we only follow Laxus's orders." Fried's expression didn't change. "In order to carry out Laxus's orders, we have no choice but to resort to despicable means." "What's your goal?" Mira bit her lip. "What's your goal?" "You're wrong, Mira Jenny of the Demonkin." Albarglin chuckled. We don't have a goal from the beginning. Bikesro laughed strangely. Our goal is to help Laxus, and Laxus only has one goal. Freed turned around, as if he knew that Mira wouldn't resist anymore. The throne of the next guild master of Fairy Tale. Chapter 429. Bang! In Fairy Tale, Makarov, who was standing in front of the bar, crushed the wine glass in his hand. He didn't care that his hand was completely wet from the wine, and his face was filled with rage. Alright, see. It wasn't just Makarov. Even Alusa and the rest of the guild members wore angry expressions on their faces. It was obvious that they were furious. In the middle of everyone, Noah had his head lowered. His fringe drooped down slightly, covering Noah's expression. No one could tell what Noah was feeling at that moment. In Noah's hand there was a letter. If you want your two lovely fiancés, then come find me. I'll bet on the title of the next president of Fairy Tale, and the title of the strongest magic shooter. That was what was written on the letter. Without a doubt, it was written by Laxus. In other words, Laxus had captured Mira and Lisanna, and left a letter of challenge to Noah. It was all for the so-called throne of the next leader of Fairy Tale, and the title of the strongest sorcerer in Fairy Tale. How childish. Laxus! Makarov roared in grief and anger. You've finally done what your father did. Have you done something you absolutely shouldn't do? Where are you? Makarov's roar reverberated throughout the entire Fairy Tale guild. Laxus! Where the hell are you? Seeing Makarov's furious roar, everyone in the guild bit their lips. At that moment, Alusha and the few remaining members were all filled with anger. It was anger towards their companions being captured by others. It was also anger towards the betrayal of their former companions. As members of the same guild, everyone in Fairy Tale had always regarded each other as the most important companions in their lives. Even if they didn't have a good relationship on the surface, when someone needed help, they would still step forward bravely. But now, one of their former companions didn't care about their friendship. Not only did he kidnap most of the members of the guild, he even openly sent a letter of challenge to the guild. It was as if he was trying to usurp the throne of Fairy Tale's leader. Who could tolerate this kind of betrayal? Even Naz, who valued his companions as much as his own life, would be furious if he knew about this. Even the simple-minded Naz was in such a state, not to mention the other members of the guild. Including Makarov, at that moment, everyone only had one thought. That was to find Laxus. Wung. At this moment, the air within the Fairy Tale guild began to vibrate. Pung. In the midst of the muffled sound of an explosion, a burst of violent magic exploded from Noah's body like a violent storm. His head was lowered, and his expression couldn't be seen clearly. That was enough magic to turn into a substance. In Fairy Tale, everyone could only see that Noah's body seemed to be wrapped in a brilliant white light. His clothes fluttered without wind, and an extremely vast amount of magic turned into a pure white pillar of light that rose from Noah's body. It passed through the ceiling, transmitted to the outside, and went straight into the clouds. Oh! A sharp gust of wind was stirred up by the violent magic, blowing into every corner of the Fairy Tale. Rumble! The ground suddenly shook without any warning, as if there was an earthquake, shaking up and down. Ah! Everyone present let out a cry of surprise. Immediately after, they were blown back by the gust of wind formed by the vibrating magic power. There was a trace of horror in their eyes as they looked at Noah, who had a white pillar of light rising into the sky from all over his body. Especially Jalibian, looking at Noah who was in the middle of the white pillar of light and the sharp wind. His expression was full of fear, as he recalled the day when the Phantom Lord was destroyed by Noah alone. Makarov raised his hand in front of himself, looking at Noah with shock in his eyes. How powerful is that magic? Alusha was the closest to Noah, so naturally, she was the one who was affected the most. Facing the turbulent flow of magic that blew on her body like a gale, her heart was terrified because of the overly powerful magic. Even her body felt a little heavy, which made Alusha want to kneel down and submit to Noah. Even Alusha was like this then, except for Makarov, Who among the magic shooters present could resist the power that surged from Noah's body like a volcanic eruption? Pa! After a while, a crisp sound rang out, and all the magic shooters in the guild involuntarily knelt down on one knee one after another. Zhu Bian fell to the ground with a look of horror on his face. Noah! Seeing this scene, Makarov hurriedly called out. Calm down. Noah! Calm down. Alusha also reacted and shouted in Noah's direction. That's Laxus. Even if he's really crazy, he won't do anything to Mira and Lisanna before you go there. Mira and Lisanna are very safe now. They're just waiting for you to save them. As soon as he said this, the whole space shook. The magic that had turned into a gale, and a solid pillar of light stagnated. In the next second, all the magic used in fairy tales slowly retracted and surged into Noah's body. Thus, the gale gradually dissipated and the pillar of light dimmed. After a long time, all the magic that rose from Noah's body returned to his body. All the magic shooters present, who were either kneeling on the ground or sitting on the ground, raised their heads with lingering fear and looked in Noah's direction. With Noah as the center, the tables and chairs in fairy tale were all blown away and piled up by the wall, leaving a vast empty space around Noah. Everyone couldn't help but gulp when they thought of the boundless mana that caused this scene, which made them kneel on the ground. This was the magic that Makarov had been praising since Noah was a child. This was the magic that Jelal claimed, that even if all the magic shooters in the world were gathered together, they wouldn't be able to obtain enough magic to rival 7 billion concepts by sacrificing Noah alone. After so many years, everyone finally saw the most outstanding magic strength of promise again. But it also made everyone's heart shrink. Under such circumstances, Noah slowly raised his head and took a deep breath. His dark and deep eyes bloomed with a cold light that froze the air, and he said such a sentence. Grandpa, my patience has reached its limit. I understand. Makarov was silent for a moment, then sighed, as if he had suddenly become much older. You are the next president of Fairy Tale, so it's up to you to decide how to deal with Laxus. Noah nodded silently, raised his feet, and walked out of the door. At the same time, Alusha also looked around, came to Julian's side, and spoke softly. Julian, I'll leave this place to you. Yes. Zhu Bian wiped the cold sweat off his face, and nodded heavily. Julian will work hard. Please. After saying this, Alusha also raised her feet and followed behind Noah, walking out of the guild. It wasn't until Noah and Alusha disappeared at the door that everyone in the guild looked at each other, unable to make any other reaction for a long time. Around Magnolia, there were hills rising and falling one after another. On one of the hills, Raxus, who was wearing a fur-collared coat, had his eyes closed. His face was expressionless as if he was resting, but in fact, he was just waiting for someone. After an unknown amount of time, a figure quietly appeared in front of Laxus. Chapter 430. Who? A cold wind blew from top to bottom, causing Noah's and Laxus's coats to flutter up and down. At that moment, Noah and Laxus's eyes met, revealing emotions that other brothers would never have. One was as cold as ice. The other was as violent as thunder. Two pairs of deep and ruthless eyes met in midair. It didn't cause any strange phenomenon, nor did it cause any strange sounds, but it caused the temperature in the air to drop to freezing point all of a sudden. In this regard, Laxus seemed to enjoy it. Since you're here, it proves that you're willing to hand over the position of Fairy Tale and the throne of the strongest magic shooter. Bet it all on this, right? Laxus said with extreme joy. Then, presumably, you should have already understood the rules. Or do you need me to tell you the conditions and rules for winning, and even how to proceed? This could basically be considered as a useless sentence. For Laxus, who only believed in strength, in this world, there was nothing more convincing than directly using strength to show results. Therefore, this so-called bet on the position of Fairy Tale and the throne of the strongest magic shooter, how could there be a second method? Fight. Other than that, there was nothing else. You should feel honored. Noah raised his eyes, with a calm gaze like the suppression of a volcano before eruption, and met Laxus's eyes. You finally succeeded in angering me. After saying that, the air around Noah's body began to slightly reverberate, and a magic visible to the naked eye turned into a burning white flame, covering Noah's body and rolling up. At this moment, the air on the entire hill became chaotic, and the air pressure dropped again and again. An astonishing pressure diffused from Noah's body, shrouding the entire hill. That overwhelming and terrifying pressure made even someone as powerful as Raxus feel suffocated for a moment. He stared at Noah, who seemed to be burning with white flames all over his body as he mobilized his magic power. Instead of being shocked, he was delighted. It's been almost 10 years, you're finally serious? Laxus laughed wildly. In the past 10 years, we've had dozens of conflicts, but you've never seriously tried to resist me, nor have you ever surrendered. When you have no power, you don't resist, you don't surrender. When you have power, you don't resist, you don't surrender. But the more you don't resist, the more you don't surrender, the more I won't accept it. Laxus fiercely tore off the fur collar on his body, and in a burst of crackling sound, his whole body was wrapped in violent thunder and lightning. The next moment, Laxus's roar resounded. Why can't you understand me? Aren't we brothers? Along with this voice, the violent thunder and lightning on Laxus's body rose. Beep beep beep. In a burst of chaotic sound, thunder and lightning as thick as an arm burst out from Laxus's body, like pythons, passed through Laxus's feet to the ground, and then fiercely spread. In an instant, the entire hill was filled with an indescribable, astonishing magical power. The space was filled with the magical power that resembled white flames burning on Noah's body, and the magical power that resembled lightning bolts flashing on Laxus's body. It was as if the sky was falling, and the earth was cracking apart, causing tremors bit by bit. Soon after, Laxus's crazed voice resounded powerfully from within the berserk thunder and lightning. Between you and me, who is the real leader of Fairy Tale? And who is the strongest magic shooter in Fairy Tale? Let's decide the winner and loser here. Looking at Laxus, who was bathed in violent thunder and lightning and crazily laughing, the anger in Noah's heart subsided bit by bit, leaving only a cold heart. For that kind of thing that can't be seen and touched, you actually went to this extent. I underestimated the extent of your mental distortion and madness. Noah slightly closed his eyes, and after a moment, suddenly opened them. Very well. Let me tell you whether a guy like you has the qualifications to stand up and challenge the so-called strongest. Ha 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 ha. Laxus was still laughing wildly, but the thunder and lightning on his body suddenly rose sharply. In the sound of breaking air, Laxus's figure suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning, flashing through space, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Noah. He raised his fist, which was surrounded by thunder and lightning, and with a burst of noisy sound, fiercely punched towards Noah's direction. Thunder Dragon's bursting fist. Like a thunder hammer falling from the sky, Laxus's fist, which was surrounded by thunder and lightning, fell mercilessly, smashing towards Noah's head. At this moment, Noah also raised his fist at an unknown time, and the white light on his fist rose sharply, like a comet, meeting the attack head-on. Bang! The fist collided with the fist, stirring up a swift and fierce wind, which spread from the point of contact of the two fists, causing slight ripples to appear in the space. Ha 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 ha. After the first move failed, Laxus shook his other wrist, and his huge fist was like a heavy hammer, suddenly smashing towards Noah's chest. However, this time, Noah did not choose to meet force with Laxus, but instead his body turned, and his leg was like a long whip swinging out. Pa! Suddenly, the tip of Noah's foot hit Laxus's wrist, which was surrounded by thunder and lightning, very accurately. With a skillful force, Laxus's fist was deflected away. Laxus's eyes were sharp, and the magic in his body surged wildly. He clenched his fists, and directly carried heavy thunder and lightning, and like raindrops suddenly enveloped Noah. Thunder Dragon's jaw. Accompanied by such a roar, the overwhelming thunder and lightning fist shadows filled the space in front of Laxus in a few breaths' time. Under Laxus's waving, it was like a torrential storm, pouring out in torrents and shooting out violently. The dazzling fist shadows filled Noah's entire vision. Although the countless fist shadows were illusory, the power they carried was not to be underestimated. If he were to casually receive them, even Noah would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, Laxus's ability was evident. It was indeed not something that ordinary S-rank magic shooters, or even the 10 great saint magicians could compare to. However, Noah's heart did not waver in the slightest. His gaze was still calm as he looked at the thunder and lightning fist shadows that were shooting towards him. He raised one hand horizontally, as if he was waving a sword, and drew an arc, bringing along a blurry black shadow, lightly sweeping past. This attack did not seem to carry any power, but Laxus could faintly feel a wave of berserk magic power that was like a stormy sea, each wave stronger than the previous one. Pa 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 pa. Noah's arm drew a mysterious arc in an instant and collided with the countless fist shadows. In that instant, it actually gave rise to an unending burst of explosions. That was the sound of the seemingly thin arm, directly smashing the fist shadows one after another. Noah waved his arms slowly with a kind of profound meaning, causing the fist shadows that were like raindrops that blotted out the sky and covered the earth to be engulfed and submerged, as though they had encountered the rolling waves of the sea. Looking carefully, when Noah was waving his arm, a white light was faintly fluctuating on his arm. Superior grade destruction magic crush. Laxus's complexion changed, but it quickly became fierce again. Beep beep beep. Dense lightning gathered in Laxus's hand and formed a thunder halberd. Thunder dragon halberd. Amidst the angry roar, the long halberd formed by thunder and lightning instantly broke away from Laxus's palm and directly pierced towards Noah's chest. However, just as the long halberd formed by thunder and lightning appeared, a burst of gorgeous white light also burst out from Noah's body. In the next second, the thunder halberd that was mixed with a terrifying power fiercely shot forward. It did not have the slightest intention of retreating. Its entire body flashed with lightning, and the magic power within it quickly condensed. Without any hesitation, it heavily collided with that burst of white light. Pung! It was only a matter of a split second. An earth-shattering explosion sounded from the top of the hill, bringing forth a burst of white and golden light, illuminating the entire area. Chapter 431. Pung! Amidst the thunderous sound, the dense white light and golden light mixed with the violent wind, and smoke rolled up the entire hill, as if something terrible had suddenly exploded. Puff! Under the attack of the violent wind, two figures retreated from the two ends of the smoke and dust. It was as if they were spat out, breaking through the area covered by the smoke and dust. After a while, Laxus's side landed on the ground. While the ground cracked, he struggled to stabilize his body. Noah's performance was much more relaxed than Laxus's. He landed very cleanly, stabilized his body, and didn't seem to be in a difficult situation. Slowly raising his head, Noah seemed to be able to see Laxus on the other side of the smoke. He clenched his fists and gently stepped forward. Pung! Accompanied by the sound of an explosion, a vortex of air that had gathered under Noah's feet directly exploded, turning into a pushing force, causing Noah's body to turn into a black line. In a flash, he directly penetrated the smoke that was still pervading the air, rushed out from the other end, and suddenly entered Laxus's field of vision. Laxus's face changed slightly, and the thunder and lightning all over his body quickly emerged. His body once again turned into a bolt of lightning, and quickly retreated. Almost at the moment when Laxus retreated, Noah's fist, which was condensed with the vortex of air, swung past Laxus's original position, bringing a gust of wind, and landed on the ground. Pung! Suddenly, under the amazing destructive power of the annihilation strike, the ground was directly smashed by Noah's fist, as if it was hit by a meteorite, and collapsed with a loud bang. However, without waiting for Laxus to catch his breath, Noah's feet exploded again. The pushing force generated by the leap technique caused his body to fiercely move forward. The fist that had just smashed on the ground was clenched again, and directly swung in the direction of Laxus. Bang! In the nick of time, Laxus raised his arm that was shrouded in lightning and blocked Noah's punch with his sturdy arm. But because of this, he lost his balance, and his feet stomped on the ground. He retreated a dozen steps before stopping. "You can actually catch up to me?" Laxus felt his arm that blocked Noah's punch tremble slightly and become numb. There was a trace of shock in his eyes. Laxus had the ability to transform his body into lightning to move around. Laxus's speed was not comparable to Jalal's meteor, or even the speed of real lightning, but it was still hard for the naked eye to catch up with him. How could Laxus not be surprised that Noah was able to catch up to Laxus without using any spells or mana? But no matter how surprised Laxus was, the truth was the truth. After knocking back Laxus with a punch, Noah's mouth also showed a sneer. His footsteps that could cause small explosions repeatedly made Noah able to fly a distance like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he once again caught up with Laxus. Both of his hands moved together, and his fists that were covered by the vortex of air pulled up shadows of fists. Like the waves of the sea, one after another, he fiercely bombarded Laxus. At this time, Noah used Annihilation Strike and leaped forward at the same time. He also used these two skills in combination to make a series of attacks that were like a storm. In the face of Noah's sudden and fierce attack, Laxus also became a little embarrassed. But his fists that were shrouded in lightning were also constantly waving, bringing bursts of thunder, fiercely waving at Noah. Pung 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 pung. For a moment on the hill, a stream of light and a streak of lightning constantly flashed and chased each other. It was so fast that ordinary people could only hear the sound of fists colliding with each other, and the shockwaves from the impact. It was an amazingly fast close combat battle. Although the power of Noah's Annihilation Strike was astonishing, Laxus's Thunder Dragon's Crushing Fist was also a magic used to attack dragons. Its power was also not to be underestimated. This allowed Noah and Laxus's attack power to be on par. At the same time, Noah's leap forward could also increase his speed. He was able to catch up with Laxus's lightning transformation, and their speed was basically on par. In this way, the offensive and defensive battle between the two naturally entered a stalemate. However, this situation was somewhat unacceptable to Laxus. After all, Laxus had already taken out his signature Dragon Slayer magic, but Noah still had not used his own magic. How could Laxus accept this? Of course, Laxus did not notice that Noah's hands and feet were faintly wrapped in a layer of electric wiring like magic lines. That was the enhancement magic. Using the enhancement magic to strengthen his arm and leg strength, in addition to the Annihilation Strike and leap forward, Noah was able to engage in such a fierce offensive and defensive battle with Laxus. Otherwise, facing Laxus, who was absolutely at the level of a 10th saint, and using the Dragon Slayer magic that could be used to attack dragons, Noah would not be able to achieve a stalemate with just close combat. Laxus, who did not know this, thought that Noah could match him without even using magic. His emotions could not help but become a little irritable, leading to a slight flaw in his movements. Noah's eyes flashed, and very appropriately grasped this flaw. He raised his fist, and his arm was like a snake, strangely twisting, and suddenly appearing in front of Laxus. With a loud bang, it landed on his shoulder. Dong! Accompanied by a muffled sound, a strong force poured down on Laxus's shoulder like a flood, causing Laxus's body to tremble. He let out a muffled groan, and as if struck by lightning he was sent flying. His body fell heavily on the ground, rubbing against the ground, and drawing a line of more than 10 meters, before slowly coming to a stop. For this attack, Noah also used the Annihilation Strike. If it was a normal person, after being hit by this punch, even if they did not die, they would be seriously injured. However, Noah did not think that this attack would have much effect on Laxus, who had used the Dragon Slayer magic, and had even transformed his body into that of a dragon. Therefore, after sending Laxus flying with a punch, Noah only slightly raised his head, glanced at Laxus, who was not far away on the ground, and said this indifferently. "That punch won't take your life. Stop pretending to be dead. Get up." Laxus, who was lying on the ground, had an angry expression on his face. His eyes were filled with malevolence, and after spitting out a mouthful of saliva mixed with blood, he slowly stood up. As Noah predicted, even if the annihilation strike could bring some damage to Laxus, it would not be able to seriously injure Laxus. In fact, Noah also discovered that with the improvement of his strength and the strengthening effect of the enhancement magic and the rune magic on his body, the effects of the annihilation strike and leap forward on his body were gradually decreasing. When Noah participated in high-level battles, the annihilation strike and leap forward basically had no effect other than increasing the strength of Noah's fists and feet. So, it won't be long before these two moves are eliminated by Noah, whose strength has improved again, right? But it was not strange to be able to learn by secretly adding some improvements to the learned moves. It was only a matter of time before Noah's strength was eliminated. Thinking like this, Noah simply gave up on using them and let the whirlpool of air around his fists and feet gradually dissipate. Laxus, who did not know the reason, saw Noah cancel the use of the skills. He thought that Noah was looking down on him and was suddenly provoked. "Don't be too complacent, little devil." Raising his head, Laxus revealed a pair of ferocious eyes like an injured beast and let out a roar. Along with the soaring anger in his heart, Laxus's magic also rose several times, causing the thunder and lightning on Laxus's body to violently spread out, crazily flying around. "You want to be merciful to me? You're not qualified." Clenching his fists tightly, Laxus squeezed out a roar from his throat like a dragon's roar. Beep beep beep. Suddenly, a violent thunder and lightning like thunder, crackling, rushed out of Laxus's body. Finally, as Laxus raised his fist, all the thunder and lightning gathered in Laxus's hand. Chapter 432. Beep beep beep. As more and more violent lightning gathered on Laxus's fist, a burst of terrifying magic power rose from Laxus's body. The strength of that magic power was something that even the 10 Saint Grand Magi couldn't match. Originally, Noah thought that Laxus was going to use Thunder Dragon's crushing fist, or Thunder Dragon's halberd. But seeing the strength of the magic power that Laxus was gathering, Noah immediately dispelled this idea. Laxus was definitely going to use some trump card. And this was indeed the case. Dragon-slaying mystery. In front of him, Laxus poured almost all of the magic power in his body into his fist, making his fist seem as if it was struck by a violent lightning that fell from the sky, and a huge lightning light that was 10 feet long burst out. At that moment, the whole hill seemed to tremble with a loud bang, and began to shake frequently. Immediately after, Laxus's foot landed on the ground, causing the ground to burst open. With a few steps, he appeared above Noah's head like a bolt of lightning, carrying a lightning that seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth. And his fist fiercely fell on Noah's head. Thunder-controlling cry. When that fist mixed with terrifying lightning fell, the air around Laxus's fist actually directly produced visible distortions, stirring up a burst of shock waves that fell on Noah's head. In the face of this attack that seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth, Noah's expression didn't change, but his eyes burst out with an astonishing expression. "Is this your strongest magic?" As if ignoring the lightning that fell from the sky, Noah fiercely raised his head and met Laxus's pair of ferocious eyes due to rage. "If that's the case, then let's end it here." After saying this, Noah's feet hurriedly retreated a few steps on the ground and stretched out his finger. Like moving clouds and flowing water, he quickly waved it in the air in front of him, drawing a dazzling light tail formed by magic power. After a moment, a faintly discernible rune quickly formed and emerged following the trajectory of Noah's finger. Square root. When this rune that Noah had used several times appeared in the air, a burst of extremely turbulent shock waves suddenly spread out with Noah as the center. Under the direct impact of this shock wave, Laxus's body that was fiercely pouncing towards Noah suddenly stopped. Lightning crazily flashed all over his body, stubbornly withstanding the shock wave like the wind, and extremely barely withstanding the power of the shock wave. At this time, Noah actually directly stretched out his hand, and a dazzling white light burst out from his hand, wherever it passed, whether it was the crazily flashing lightning or the substantial shock wave. All of them were like pieces of crumbling earth, shattering into pieces one by one. Immediately, Noah's hand quickly and violently grasped Laxus's fist that was enveloped by the 10 feet large lightning. Shatter! In the next second, following Noah's sudden low shout, the dazzling white light on his palm was like a dazzling sun, erupting at that moment. The light was so strong that it directly covered the crazily flashing lightning on Laxus's fist. Pung! Thus, without any surprise, under the full power of Noah's shatter, the crazily flashing lightning on Laxus's fist seemed to have turned into golden sparks in the midst of an explosion, and exploded. Wah! Laxus's fierce eyes finally showed an expression of shock. Although the superior grade destruction spell Shatter could not only shatter anything on a molecular level, it could even shatter magic, but that still depended on the situation. For example, even if a fledgling rookie magic shooter learned Shatter, could it be that he could completely shatter the magic of the 10 great saint magic shooters? That could not be said to be impossible, but in order to reach that level, there was a prerequisite: a large amount of magic. This was because the larger the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. This was because the harder the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. This was because the harder the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. This was because the harder the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. It was not that Laxus did not know how strong Noah's magic was, but he really did not expect that even after using the profound meaning of the Dragon Slayer magic, it would still be shattered in an instant. How could Laxus not be shocked by this? After shattering Laxus's Dragon Slayer magic, Noah's eyes sharpened. He glanced at the shocked Laxus in front of him, lifted his leg, turned around, and kicked at Laxus with a strong wind sound. Pung! Before Laxus could react in time, the fierce wind caused by the kick ferociously landed on his body. After being strengthened by the enhanced magic, the ferocious force brought about by the kick sent Laxus flying, crashing into a rock wall in the distance. Bastard brat! Feeling the pain from his own body, the fury in Laxus's heart finally erupted. He fiercely jumped up, and because of his agitation, his eyes could not even be seen, leaving only the whites of his eyes staring at Noah. I will definitely not forgive you. In addition to being a lightning magic shooter, Laxus also hid the Dragon Slayer magic that even the members of the Fairy Tale Guild did not know about. Therefore, Laxus's most powerful magic was the Dragon Slayer magic, and his most powerful move was naturally the profound meaning of the Dragon Slayer magic. Now that his most powerful move was broken, it could be said that Laxus had very little chance of winning. However, did Laxus not have any magic that was stronger than the Dragon Slayer magic? The answer was yes. Moreover, it was a magic that all the sorcerers in the Fairy Tale Guild, and even the sorcerers in the entire magic world knew about. I want you to disappear from me. With such a roar, Laxus mobilized all the remaining magic in his body, and even surged out of his body rioting. Ding! In the next moment, a light tinkling sound like a bell reverberated through the air. Streaks of resplendent light suddenly rose from the ground around Laxus and rushed into the sky. Seeing this scene, Noah's expression could not help but change. It was surprise. That magic, could it be? In Noah's bewildered voice, the brilliance that surrounded Laxus's body rushed into the sky, and an extremely gorgeous geometric pattern rotated and spread out, accompanied by the sound of a solemn movement. Not knowing whether or not it was an illusion, and like the soaring brilliance, it filled the whole world. Laxus seemed to want to use his palms to wrap an invisible sphere, and put his hands in front of his body. Immediately, a resplendent ball of light that emitted boundless brilliance appeared in front of Laxus's hands, illuminating the surrounding space. Ha 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 ha! Laxus laughed wildly. This magic, you should be very familiar with it, right? Hearing this, Noah looked at Laxus, who was surrounded by brilliant brilliance, and held a gorgeous ball of light in his hands, and his expression gradually returned to normal. As long as it is the caster's inner thoughts, everything will be the target. The Crusade Super Trial Magic Fairy Law. You actually know fairy law? This is also thanks to that old man, that I can master such a powerful magic. Laxus laughed loudly. Now have a taste of this so-called crusade magic. After saying this, a huge amount of magic rose from Laxus's body in an instant, and the brilliance of the resplendent ball of light in front of Laxus's hands became even more dazzling. In the next moment, Laxus closed his hands. Fairy law, activate. As soon as his voice fell, a magic circle that was almost identical to the gorgeous geometric pattern in the sky rapidly spread out from Laxus's closed palms, bringing with it a burst of extremely dazzling brilliance, and like a tide, it rushed in all directions. The speed of the brilliance's expansion was really too fast, and in an instant, it enveloped the entire hill, submerging Noah within. Chapter 433. Wang. When the dazzling light spread out in all directions like a tide, Noah did not even have the time to dodge. He was directly enveloped by the dazzling light. With Noah's ability, if he directly released the magician, and let the magician combine into the death feather form, coupled with the numerous acceleration nuns engraved on the magician, it was not impossible for him to dodge the light in a short period of time. However, Noah did not choose to dodge in the end. Instead, he stood in the same place, and let the light drown him. Fairy law was a super magic that targeted everything the spellcaster deemed as an enemy, and it was able to subjugate everything. Once this super magic was activated, it would be an exaggeration to say that it could cover the entire Fiori kingdom. However, if it wanted to cover the whole of Magnolia in a short period of time, it would definitely not be a problem. Therefore, even if Noah could dodge for a moment, the fairy law would immediately catch up to him. Therefore, Noah simply did not dodge. Of course, this was not because Noah was looking for death. Wang. In the midst of the vibrations in the air, the gigantic magic circle that seemed to be able to cover the entire sky with the emblem of the fairy tale at its center was slowly rotating. With the outline of the magic circle as the source, a ray of light descended and covered the hill below. This dazzling radiance lasted for a very, very long time. It was only when the mana surging from the center of the radiance gradually weakened that the radiance began to dim little by little. After an unknown amount of time, the huge magic array in the sky slowly shrank as it rotated. Along with the resplendent light that filled the sky, it disappeared. Huff! Huff! On the hill, Laxus's arm that was hovering in the air weakly hung down. His whole body was panting violently, and even his eyes showed traces of fatigue and weakness. Although fairy law was very powerful, the amount of magic required to activate it was also abnormally high. Before this, Laxus even used Dragon Slayer mysteries. In this way, no matter how powerful Laxus was, his magic was almost exhausted. After all, Laxus was not Noah. It was impossible for him to have enough magic to rival the 7 billion magic, that even if all the magic shooters in the world gathered together, they would not be able to gather. Naturally, there was no way for him to be like Noah after using a super magic, and still not blushing or panting. Ha ha, ha ha ha. After a while, Laxus let out a few weak laughs that could not be concealed and gradually turned into laughter. How is it? Do you still want to go against me, brother? Laxus did not notice that there was an indescribable emptiness in his laughter. Because Laxus was not as happy as he appeared on the surface, and even felt extremely uncomfortable. However, even Laxus himself didn't notice the discomfort he was feeling. He could only use the maniacal laughter on the surface to hide his inner feelings. At this moment, a voice that sounded like a laugh, yet not a laugh, reverberated and drilled into Laxus's ears. You can't be thinking that the victor has already been decided, right? Laxus's laughter came to an abrupt end. His eyes widened as he turned his head abruptly and looked in front of him. In the next second, Noah's figure slowly appeared amidst a cloud of dust and entered Laxus's field of vision. Impossible! Laxus could not help but take a step back and exclaim in shock. You! Why? Fairy tale was one of the 3 great spells. It was a super spell created by the first president of the fairy tale, Mavis Fairy Law. After being hit squarely by that super magic that could suppress everything, Noah not only looked unharmed on the surface, but he was also completely fine. How is this possible? Indeed, this was something that should be impossible. If the fairy law did not activate, it would be fine. However, once it was activated and hit the opponent, no matter how powerful Noah's magic was, if he was hit, he would definitely lose in an instant. That was a super magic that suppressed the enemy's spirit. Once it was hit, there was no way to defend against it. However, that would only work if the fairy law really hit Noah. Therefore, not long after, Laxus noticed something. Unknowingly, a pair of palms appeared in the air. The palms of Noah, who was in front of him, were constantly fluctuating with a resplendent ball of light. Suddenly, Laxus's pupil shrank. Fairy law? That's right. Noah stopped pouring magic into the resplendent ball of light in his hands, allowing the fairy law to dissipate in his hands. He retracted his hands and looked at Laxus's pupils that shrank. I used the fairy law to cancel out your fairy law. Laxus, did you think that you were the only one who knew the fairy law? You used the fairy law to cancel out the fairy law? Laxus was completely stunned. It was only then that Laxus recalled what had happened. In these 2 years, Noah had gone to Sky Wolf Island to receive the teachings of the first chairman of the fairy tale. Then, not to mention the fairy law, it would not be strange for Noah to have mastered all 3 of the fairy tale spells. But does the fairy law have such a defensive method? You are really naive, Laxus. Seeing Laxus's stunned look, Noah sighed. Since I know how to use the fairy law, and also know how to activate the fairy law, and the principles of the fairy law, then why can't I use the same fairy law to cancel out your fairy law? Just like 2 people in a battle, if one of them already knew the moves the other was using, then, would it be difficult to break it? The so-called know thyself and know thy enemy to win 100 battles could also be used in this situation. Damn it! Laxus finally reacted and gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to do something, his body suddenly seemed to have lost its strength and became soft, causing Laxus to kneel on the ground. Seeing this, Noah directly cast his gaze on Laxus. Your magic has been exhausted. There is no way for you to continue fighting. Laxus, you have lost this battle. I lost. Laxus's eyes violently fluctuated. Looking at his trembling hands, he asked in disbelief. I lost. You lost. Noah lightly replied. It's over, Laxus. This sentence seemed to have stimulated Laxus, causing Laxus to roar with extreme excitement. No. It's impossible for me to lose. Looking at the crazy Laxus, Noah's face was still calm as he said this sentence word by word. Why are you not willing to give up? Why are you so persistent? Because of the position of the guild leader? Because of the throne of the strongest? I'm afraid not, right? Laxus glared at Noah. However, Noah turned a blind eye and directly said Laxus's deepest thoughts. Laxus, you don't want the position of the guild leader, nor do you want to become the strongest magic shooter, nor do you really want Fairy Tale to become the so-called strongest guild and eliminate all the weaklings in the guild. Noah's voice deeply pierced Laxus's heart. You just want to be recognized by others. Laxus's whole body trembled. Even his lips trembled as he stared blankly at Noah. After a while, Laxus seemed to have completely lost his strength and fell back on the ground. His eyes looking at the sky lost focus. Chapter 434. The battle was over. When Laxus chose to lie down, Noah knew that the battle was really over. He became silent and sighed faintly in his heart. From a young age, Noah was picked up by Makarov in an unknown forest. He was adopted as a grandson and lived in Makarov's house. If Makarov was the first person that Noah knew when he was born, then as Makarov's grandson, Laxus was the second person that Noah knew in his life. Noah still remembered that when Makarov called him home and introduced him to Laxus, Laxus looked at him with a complicated expression. Joy. A little, right? Disgust. A little, right? But Noah could only remember that at that time, Laxus looked at him with a hint of sympathy, as if he was looking at someone of the same kind. That's right. Someone of the same kind. Because from that moment on, Noah and Laxus had the same identity. The identity of Makarov's grandson. Why did Laxus become this mentally twisted child, who could not grow up? It was because of the identity of Makarov's grandson. As one of the most famous 10 great magicians in the magic world, and also the leader of the Fiori Kingdom's #1 guild, Makarov's reputation was resounding. This caused Laxus to bear the identity of Makarov's grandson since young. No matter what he did, people would only say, as expected of Makarov's grandson, and never say, as expected of Laxus's grandson. For Laxus, the identity of Makarov's grandson was too heavy. After all, no matter how outstanding Laxus's achievements were, people would take it for granted because of this identity. And if he did something wrong, then it would be a disgrace to Makarov and Fairy Tale. How could Laxus not feel pressured? Because as Makarov's grandson, he had always been looked at with prejudice and could not receive a true evaluation. In addition, Laxus's father had done some shady things that damaged the reputation of Fairy Tale and was expelled from the guild by Makarov. Using this as an opportunity, he wanted to find his true self and receive a fair evaluation from others. This was why Laxus's personality changed so much. Just like what Noah said, Laxus was not really coveting the position of the guild leader of Fairy Tale. Nor was it because of the title of the strongest that caused him to act so excessively, but because he wanted to gain the recognition of others. This was the real Laxus. Noah could understand Laxus. Although it was not as serious as Laxus's, Noah had been looked at differently by others for a period of time because of his identity as Makarov's grandson. In fact, Noah, who could not rashly learn magic because he had too much mana and could not control it, was secretly mocked by many people because he did not even know how to use magic as Makarov's grandson. Since then, Noah had been judged by others because of various things. It was not until he left Fairy Tale and chose to train outside for 4 years, and then traveled in another world for 2 years, that this phenomenon began to disappear. Noah felt that if he was like Laxus, who was watched by others from a young age and endured extraordinary pressure, then maybe he really could become like Laxus. It was because he clearly knew what kind of eyes he would receive if he became Makarov's grandson that Laxus looked at Noah as if he was the same kind of person. After that, because the relationship between Makarov and Laxus was not good, and they quarreled every 2 to 3 days, Noah could not stand that kind of atmosphere. So he moved out of Makarov's house and lived in the guild. However, even though they did not live together for long, living under the same roof made Noah the person who could understand Laxus the most. Unfortunately, understanding was one thing, but Noah could not agree with Laxus, because Laxus's methods and changes were undoubtedly developing in the wrong direction. With this thought in mind, Noah moved and came before Laxus. He looked at Laxus, who was lying on the ground and looking at the sky with unfocused eyes. His entire body was exuding an aura of decadence. Noah suddenly spoke. Because we are the grandchildren of the 10 great Saint Magus, we have always been looked at with colored glasses. So if you want to get rid of it, don't you think that directly defeating a 10 great Saint Magus would be a very good way? Laxus's eyes that had lost focus suddenly focused rapidly and gradually brightened. We did what Grandpa could do. That's why others would say as expected of Makarov's grandson. But if we did something that even Grandpa couldn't do, then others wouldn't be able to use it as an excuse. Noah muttered to himself, intentionally or unintentionally. As long as you remember not to take the wrong path, then no matter what, surpassing our predecessors is something that only we, the descendants, can do. Don't you think so? After saying that, Noah no longer paid attention to Laxus, whose eyes were getting brighter and brighter, and turned his back to him. At that moment, a voice sounded from afar. Noah, brother Noah. Following that call, a few figures ran over from afar. They were none other than Mira, Lisanna, and Alessia. Seeing Mira and Lisanna, Noah couldn't help but reveal a trace of joy. He took a step forward and directly hugged Lisanna, who had rushed over, into his embrace. Feeling the familiar softness in his arms, he then looked at Mira, who was slowly coming to a stop, and couldn't help but size her up. "We're fine." As if she could read Noah's thoughts, Mira smiled gently. "It was Alyssa who found us," Angelina said. "I think that Thor Council shouldn't be too far away from Lax's. So when you were fighting Lax's, I secretly snuck around and found them in the depths of the forest." Alyssa nodded at Noah. Luckily, Thor Council didn't make things difficult for Mira and Lisanna. It was just as I thought. After all, we're all in the same guild. Thor Council just kept an eye on Mira and Lisanna, so I saved them first. Hearing this, Noah breathed a sigh of relief. Although Noah also felt that Laxus shouldn't be so crazy as to do anything to his companions, Mira and Lisanna were still Noah's fiancés, after all, and Noah couldn't help but feel nervous. Now he could finally rest assured. Alyssa was really amazing. Lisanna, who raised her head from Noah's embrace, exclaimed in amazement. Even the entire Thor Council couldn't do anything to Alyssa. Although I knew that Alyssa was powerful before, I didn't think that she would be this powerful. Hearing this, Alyssa and Mira looked at each other and smiled, not saying anything. Even Noah just smiled and didn't say anything. Noah knew that it wasn't something to be surprised about. Although Fried, Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin were strong, they were only at the level of Naz and Gray. The strongest, Fried, probably surpassed them by a little, but he wasn't at the level of an S-rank Magus. If the three of them were to face an S-rank Magus at the same time, they should have a chance of winning. But was Alyssa an ordinary S-rank Magus? To put it bluntly, Alyssa could no longer be considered an S-rank Magus. In Noah's opinion, the current Alyssa definitely had the strength that Jalal had when he hadn't retrieved Zeke. At that time, Jalal had been evaluated by Noah to be extremely close to being one of the 10 great Saint Magi. Alyssa was naturally the same. Alyssa wasn't far from being one of the 10 great Saint Magi. If someone were to give the counselors some leeway, Alyssa would definitely be able to get the title of one of the 10 great Saint Magi like Zeke. For Alyssa, who wasn't far from being one of the 10 great Saint Magi, it wouldn't be difficult for her to deal with 3 Magi, who weren't even S-rank. At this thought, Noah immediately thought of his other companions in the guild. He turned his head and looked at Laxus, who was still lying on the ground. "Right, where are the other companions in the guild?" Raxus frowned and said such a sentence. "I didn't capture those people." Chapter 435. You weren't the one who caught them? When Laxus's words reached the ears of Noah, Mira, Lisanna, and Alyssa, the atmosphere changed completely. Alyssa, in particular, stepped forward and questioned Laxus, who was lying on the ground, due to the exhaustion of his mana. "You're still planning to hide it at this point. Don't tell me you guys think that I'm the reason why everyone else in the guild went missing just because I asked Thor Clan to find the sisters?" Laxus seemed to have shaken off his dejected state of mind. He used his usual arrogant attitude, but there was no sense of tit-for-tat in his tone as he weakly said this. "I asked the sisters to come here because I wanted to make a clean break with Noah. If I didn't do that, because of that old man, he probably wouldn't be serious with me. That's all. He didn't do anything else." Laxus glanced at Alyssa. "I'll say it again. I wasn't the one who caught them." Upon hearing that, Noah and the others immediately looked at each other, and they were at a loss for a moment. After learning that Raxus had ordered Thor's council to take Mira and Lisanna away, everyone, including Noah, believed that the disappearance of their guild members in the past 2 days was also Raxus's doing. After all, Laxus had always shown a certain degree of disgust towards his guild members who weren't up to his standards. Sometimes, he would even brazenly say that he wanted them to disappear. If it weren't for this attitude, why would Noah suspect that Laxus was involved in this matter? Because of this and the fact that Laxus had Laxus take Mira and Lisanna away, everyone thought that Laxus had the idea of usurping the position of president because Noah had taken it away from him. That was why he had captured everyone in the guild by hook or by crook. Otherwise, Makarov wouldn't have been so furious. But now, Laxus said that he didn't do anything to their missing guild members. This stunned everyone. Alessia seemed to want to say something, but she was stopped by Noah. Since Laxus said that he didn't do it, then it definitely wasn't him, Noah asserted. Although it's more or less extreme, this man isn't the kind of person who won't admit what he did. Alessia, you should understand. Alessia was speechless. Indeed, with Laxus's personality, if he really did something, he would either admit it or ignore the questioning of others. If he gave a certain answer, then it definitely wouldn't be wrong. So, if Laxus really did kidnap everyone in the guild, then with his personality, even if he was questioned by Alessia, he would still admit it. And if Laxus didn't want to admit it, then he wouldn't choose to lie. Most likely, he would give an ambiguous answer, such as who knows. But Lysana, who was still in Noah's arms, tightened her grip on Noah's waist uneasily. If it wasn't Laxus, then who could have kidnapped everyone in the guild? This was exactly what everyone wanted to know. Noah, who was hugging her, patted her back in an attempt to dispel the uneasiness in her heart. At the same time, he thought of something. There was a trace of extremely strange and dark magic left in Lucy's room. Thinking about it carefully, at that time, Noah had also noticed this trace of magic, and denied the possibility of Laxus being the culprit. Later on, when Mira and Lysana were kidnapped, everyone in the guild believed that Laxus was the culprit. At that time, Noah had neglected this matter because of his two fiancées. Now that he thought about it, this matter was indeed contradictory. No matter what, let's go back to the guild first, Mira said as if to disperse the heavy feeling in the air. We have to inform the president about this matter first. Everyone came to their senses and nodded in agreement. But at that moment, a weak voice sounded from not far away. Rac Sass. With such a weak and powerless voice, and even a trace of pain, a figure staggered from not far away with great difficulty. Not long after, his legs gave way and he fell to the ground. Laxus, who was also lying on the ground, narrowed his eyes. Freed! Freed! Mira, Lysana, and Alessia cried out in shock. Even Noah furrowed his brows, his expression darkening bit by bit. The reason for that was because Freed, who had fallen to the ground, was covered in injuries. Furthermore, they appeared to be quite serious. Alessia. Laxus turned his furious gaze towards Alessia. Of course, in order to save Mira and Lysana, Alessia had publicly admitted that she had defeated all three members of Raiden. Thus, it was not strange that Laxus suspected that Alessia was the cause of Freed's injuries. However, Alessia was also rather shocked. No, I only knocked them out. I didn't hit them so hard. As she said that, a vexed expression appeared on Alessia's face. It seemed that even if it wasn't Alessia who had done it, given Alessia's upright personality, she would have probably blamed herself for Freed's injuries. Noah and the rest immediately moved towards Freed. Even Laxus, who was lying on the ground due to exhaustion, struggled to get up and went to Freed's side. Freed. Laxus. Freed, who was being carried up by Laxus, had a pained expression on his face. He couldn't even speak clearly. It seemed that he had suffered rather serious injuries. Freed. Laxus shouted angrily. What the hell is going on? Weren't all of you defeated by Alessia? After that someone attacked us. Freed spat out those words with great difficulty. Bikesro. Iba, they were all taken away, to cover my escape. Someone attacked you. Laxus's face was filled with shock and anger. It's those guys, right? Alessia clenched her fists and said angrily. They're the ones who captured our companions in the guild. Not just our companions, but even Thor's castle was attacked? Mira and Lysana were both bewildered. Noah crouched down and said as he looked at Freed's dirty face. Do you know who the attackers are? I'm not sure. Freed's hands trembled as he took out a totem-like wooden doll with only a head. You have to be careful. Having said that, Freed's head tilted to the side, and he fainted as though he had completed his mission. Mira, Lysana, Alessia, and Laxus were all shocked when they saw that. Don't worry, he's just fainted. Noah's sharp senses detected that Freed was still breathing. After a quick check, he came to this conclusion, and picked up the doll in Freed's hand. What's this? That's a doll Bikesro uses to control, Laxus said with an ugly expression. Bikesro's magic can control souls, so there should be a soul inside. That means, Lisanna said with some uncertainty, if we let it lead the way, we might be able to find Bikesro? If we use it well, we might even be able to find the attacker's lair. Noah gripped the wooden doll tightly and stood up, looking at everyone around him. Take Laxus and Freed back to the guild for treatment, and report this to grandfather. Do you want to go alone? Mira asked worriedly. It's too dangerous alone. I'll go with you. Alessia stood up without any explanation. No. Noah shook his head without hesitation. The guild might continue to be attacked. Although grandfather is here, Laxus can't fight and Mishgang isn't here. How can the guild not have an S-rank archmage guarding it? Looking at the worried expressions on the girls' faces, Noah had no choice but to give them some advice. I have Bio. Even if something happens, I can escape. If you come with me, it'll be difficult for me to move. They couldn't find a reason to refute him, and could only reluctantly agree. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.